we're going to talk about goalposts, specifically the movement of goalposts. In recent years, the sales numbers for comic books has continued to rise, year after year. I expected that in 2020, though, that the numbers would be abysmal due to the pandemic and the lockdowns and people just generally not having a whole lot of extra income to spend. And I'm sure Comicsgate was counting on that as well, so that they could use that as proof that SJWs are destroying my comics. But when the numbers for 2020 were released, I think everybody was surprised to see that not only was the numbers really good, they were higher than 2019, which were higher than 2018, which were higher than 2017. And this created a dilemma for Comicsgate. How do you keep pushing your agenda that the comics industry is dying and using outrage clicks to translate into donations for their independent projects when the industry is so clearly not dying? In fact, pretty much every year since the inception of Comicsgate, comic book sales have risen. That poses a problem for their brand. Eventually, fans might start to catch on and the cash flow will dry up. A new narrative had to be created. Enter manga versus comics. So, is manga outselling American superhero comics? Yes, it is. But as always with the Comicsgate crowd, they're ignoring or perhaps don't comprehend the context around this fact. See, everything that they say and do is dedicated to one goal and one goal only: to convince people that comics are dying and that it's because of the SJW woke boogeyman. The truth, of course, is not so simple at all. And they rely on that fact to create outrage, which again translates into donations for products that often don't get completed or fulfilled. See my Richard Meyer video for more on that. Yes, manga outsells American superhero comics, which is a trend that began over a decade ago. I personally don't give a shit about manga, but I have friends who do, and I can definitely see the appeal even if I don't personally prefer it. It's valid. It's a valid form of comics media. Honestly, I really don't see much difference between the two in general. Of course, the formats are different, the styles are different, but both are, graphic novel formats with, narratives and fantasy elements and sci-fi narratives and stuff like that. To me, they're all comics. They're all part of the comics market. And the market sees it that way too. Superhero comics and manga are both included in the same overall market. Many of the same retailers sell both. Many fans are fans of both. It's arbitrary to pit one against the other, which is why nobody bothered to whine about it until it became necessary for their agenda, to keep people convinced that the sinister wokies are killing comics or whatever. So if manga and comics are both part of the same market, why the panic? Are they just concerned about superhero comics, not the industry as a whole? Either way, the goalposts have shifted by design of Comicsgate and the handful of propaganda outlets that regurgitate their agendas. With manga, entire stories are collected into fairly inexpensive, huge volumes, making it easier for casual readers and new fans to jump in without a lot of priming. Each manga series is a new, complete story, whereas superhero comics, even when beginning a new story, often pick up on crucial threads from previous stories. That makes manga a great entry point for new readers. But that's not all that's at play here. Manga, despite outperforming comics, is not the dominant force in the comics and graphic novel market. Kids' comics are, juvenile fiction, but you don't hear Comicsgate crying about that. Why? Because as opposed to manga, it's not convenient to their narrative and financial goals. Juvenile fiction has risen in sales a lot recently, and these books cater to an enormous demographic with parents with lots of disposable income. This demographic is much larger than comics and manga. One thing Comicsgate doesn't want you to consider is that most comics, including manga, are mostly targeted at younger audiences. Comicsgate feels entitled to have stories cater to them because they grew up on superheroes and seem to think that, the comics should have matured along with them. That's asinine and, ironically, immature. But Comicsgate isn't known for their sophisticated perspective. Publishers have known for over a decade that manga was on the rise, and they've learned the hard way with things like the New 52 that books aimed at adults don't sell as well. Comics have historically been aimed at younger people, which makes it all the more repulsive that Comicsgate tries to claim that stories and characters they don't like are inherently bad. They're just not for you. Superhero comics are in no way in danger of failing. even if they're not number one. They do need to, and seem to currently be, adjusting to reach a larger, more diverse audience. A lot of new readers don't shop at local comic book stores, so new avenues for sales have opened up. Digital, of course, is one metric Comicsgate loves to ignore. Kids' comics and graphic novels are often sold at school book fairs, which you probably had some of those when you were in elementary school. This is capitalism, adapting to a fluctuating market, making changes to stay profitable. Nothing new. This has been happening since comics began. The manga versus comics rhetoric is a false dichotomy, and anyone trying to use it on you is insulting your intelligence and simply being deceitful. Maybe the specific person who's saying it to you in a comment section or a thread, doesn't realize that it's kind of deceitful, but that's only because they were instructed to believe it by their con artist cult figures. I personally can't help but see racist undertones with the manga versus comics false dichotomy. I've got no evidence of that, which I will openly admit, but when we consider the source of this fake outrage, the person that it began with, it starts to seem more and more likely that the unspoken concern is that America is no longer number one, being edged out by Japanese products. The manga is destroying comics narrative seemed to come out of nowhere, and it quickly became the most common claim cited by Comicsgate and its followers. But where did it begin?
To keep my comics in the plastic, fresh copy, whiteboard and bag it. The only novels we read was graphic. Dressed like a nerd and I acted anxious. Got my first comic book and was fascinated. And just like that, your whole world changes. I saw my whole life right between the pages. DC and Marvel had the insane shit. Bruce Lee, Bruce Banner, Bruce Wayne, kid. Getting in the game, well, you need some practice. If you wanna get your comic book stacked the fattest, hit the shop on the Wednesday, check the new rack. Flip through the front, grab yours from the back. I'm bagging the board, add it to your stack. I used to keep my comics in the plastic. Fresh copy, whiteboard and bag it. The only novels we read was graphic. Dressed like a nerd and I acted anxious. Got my first comic book and was fascinated. And just like like that, your whole world changes. I saw my whole life right between the pages. DC and Marvel had the insane shit. Bruce Lee, Bruce Banner, Bruce Wayne, kid. Getting in the game while
The only way that you can really stop this kind of thing is to arouse public opinion. It's very upsetting. It has a bad moral effect.
Forced adversity.
When I was a kid, it was too much supper. Now it's comic books.
I'll burn them tomorrow.
Bad, B-A-D-D, bothered about Dungeons and Dragons.
Ask yourself, what's more terrifying? Fear or the frightened?
I think there ought to be a law against them. Tonight I'm going to show you why.
I think there ought to be a law against them as well. And what is them in this case? I don't know. Bad narratives? Stupid narratives? Stupid people? No, that's not a good idea. Can't start just like legislating dumb people, because I would definitely get swept up in that. But you know who wouldn't get swept up in that? Our co-host, Morgan. Hello.
Hey, how's it going? I figured I was the them they were looking to make a law against. I mean, they've made laws against me elsewhere, so
True. Yeah. Yikes. Oh man, got too real. Too real.
Sorry.
Already.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. Punching my mic.
It's gonna get real today, and it's also gonna get pretty unreal.
Yeah, we're gonna get
depending how we. The unfortunate thing is we didn't have time. This is all on me. Time beforehand to determine exactly which way we're gonna go with the little bit of information that I kind of stumbled into last night. Yeah, we'll get there. But I did cut into the video, the pre-stream video, to save the surprise for anybody that's not aware of who is ultimately seemingly responsible for that narrative, which is the subject of today's episode. And in that regard, what do you got? How you want to set us up?
Well, I will take us into just a broad overview to start. We can go from there. So this is the real stream, Button Eyes. We're here for real, in your ears and your eyes.
Or are we? Maybe we pre-recorded this knowing you were going to ask that, Sean, Button Eyes Sean. And now we're just kind of responding to you to try and convince you that we're live when we're really not.
We're very powerful. We use this precognitive powers to run a podcast.
Yep. Because we have weird priorities.
Yes, we do. All right.
Yeah. Button Eyes is a plant, and this is all just set up. You guys are falling for it. All right, sorry. Let's back to the real shit.
All right. So today we're talking about anime, manga, comics, and some panics around them before and after Comicsgate.
Oh,
yeah. So I
didn't know there was a before. So look at you educating me already.
Well, there's been a few times. It's never really stuck because I think most people are like, pardon my French, it's fucking cartoons, right? The fuck cares?
Mm-hmm.
So like when there have been stories about violent, this violent Japanese cartoons or manga or whatever, mostly it just sort of gets swept aside. But there's a few that have.
Oh, I see. I thought you were saying that there's been previous ones that are like pitting them against each other.
Not so much.
Okay.
No, it's more that like this is not the first time we get into this like manga as a tool of moral panic.
Sure.
Or anime as a tool of moral panic.
I follow now.
But they're not the same song, but they share some similar beats.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the baseline that runs through everything we're going to talk about today, except for the thing you mentioned last night, is a little topic we like to call Orientalism. Are you familiar with Orientalism?
Vaguely. Like I understand generally what it means just when you say it. And as far as like how often it's used, it's not something that I can, if I see it, that I'm necessarily going to go, oh, that's Orientalism. You know what I mean? Like the same way that I would just racism or something like that. So
right. I'm happy you started Earthrise, Sean, and I'm happy I'm one of your favorite people. So to now they really sound like a plant, right? They started the Transformers show,
Right.
and they're saying I'm one of their favorite people. Yeah, they're definitely a plant.
You've got fans now.
God, that's terrifying. Don't tell me that. So broad strokes, Orientalism is the idea that there is a global East and a global West, and these are fundamentally different and at odds with each other.
And that's not true, or because I feel like there's lots of people that want us to believe that is a true thing that we need to think about and worry about.
That is something people believe is true and act as though is true and want you to believe it. And while country to country, continent to continent, there are differences, right? At the end of the day, people are kind of people, right? Like, there's going to be more similarities than most people think, and the differences aren't a product of where they are on a map, rather the development of different countries and civilizations over time.
Okay. So what you're saying is people are people, so why should it be that you and I should get along so awfully?
Right. So Orientalism isn't explicitly xenophobic. It's certainly racist. But there are often, when you're talking about the things that the Orient, which is the East, does, it is presented as less modern, whether that is they are less intellectually developed, or they have not been corrupted by our modern Western civilization. Also, Western civilization isn't a thing. But that's a whole other thing I could get on. So these are
concepts that, like, I understand what people generally mean when they say them, but like I don't like intuitively think of things that way.
Okay, sure. So anything I can clean up for you?
What's that?
Anything I can clean up for you?
Yeah.
What would you like me to clean up?
Sorry. I'm not hearing you the best because I had my headphones kind of down a little bit.
Oopsie noodle.
No, I mean, I get it. Like, I get it. What I mean is that, like, it's not a framework that I will naturally look at things through. It's like if someone mentions Western this or that or whatever, like, okay, yeah, I get what you're saying, but it's just not, I don't know. I guess in the same way that I kind of think nation states are stupid.
Right.
This
is even more dumb than that.
It's like borders are dumb, and it's like, but those at least actually exist, kind of. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yeah. Theoretically.
So the premise of Western civilization is that everything. Okay, so first off, if you look at the map, it typically only includes Europe and parts of the Americas. It's not really the West. I don't think that most of these people who talk about Western civilization think about South America or Africa, even though if you look on a map below that little Europe thing, there's this whole big Africa thing. So there is that. But also, for the bulk of the history of Europe, Europeans have been trying to kill each other. They love killing each other.
It's really fun for them, apparently.
Yeah, and they got very good at it, so much so that they exported Europeans killing people elsewhere for profit and religion. But even in earlier periods, this idea of Western history is sort of invalidated by how certain empires and nation states and peoples crossed back and forth over that imaginary divide, that where that sits on a map is different. So, like, for example, Turkey. Do you think of Turkey as a Western country or an Eastern country?
I guess I don't. I wouldn't think of it as. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Not Western. It doesn't seem right. But
Right. What about Israel?
Well, I mean, if we're calling Western like a collection of characteristics, then I would say that they might contain a few that are similar to some other Western countries. But
Right. But
yeah,
now,
I don't know.
Yeah, now
That's
we're
why
not
like
really
these
talking
things
about
are not. They're kind of abstract things that don't have a real application to me.
right, exactly. And that's you hit it on the nose. That they're fuzzy and hard to apply because it is kind of a thought terminating cliche, right? It's that they are different because they are East and West. But like, where does that East-West divide sit? What does it all mean? What are the differences? And and then so the people we're going to talk about today think of Japan as in the East.
Uh-huh.
And they also probably think that Saudi Arabia is in the East. One of them is a absolute monarchy with heavy theocratic and authoritarian tendencies. The other is a representative democracy with a show monarchy, even more show, like even with even less powerful or even less power than the British monarchy.
Well, I mean, I think the difference is that one's in the East and one is in the middle of the East, right? Is that not?
That's sure.
I'm just
Right. No, but that like there's another category there. We had to break that out, right? Like, is Russia in the West? If they're a Western country, they're very different than Canada. They have different values and histories and traditions. And then like I could get, even more. Is Cuba a Western country?
Yeah, because it is definitely a certain set of characteristics that are meant to be called to mind whenever this. Usually, somebody says West or East like that, right?
Right.
And that doesn't include necessarily like any kind of communist or Soviet countries. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, yeah. But I was looking just a minute ago, button eyes, Sean. There. So, because I was like, what is the actual definition of Oriental? And so it really is just what you're talking about. It's like it's from the perspective of Europe,
right?
And it's the term for the East from Europe's perspective, which is why. I kind of just went along with it when I learned a few years ago that Oriental is actually kind of not the best way to refer to these things.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I guess that's racist or whatever. And I just took it, face value that they don't like it. Like, why would I continue to say it? But now I understand it's because it's literally from a fucking white European perspective. And it's like, how about you don't view us from, just your point of view. And that's the starting point of everything that in existence. Right.
Right. And it's kind of a modern, I mean, not like 21st century modern, but certainly the last few hundred years, the idea of a West began to sort of coalesce, and it's coalesced before in some awful things that are definitely outside the scope of what we're talking about. But if you're familiar with the Crusades, that's sort of the same mindset that that informs some of this East versus West.
I do want to address something in chat real quick, just so we can hopefully move past this and actually talk about things that are worth talking about.
Right.
Welcome. You're talking about, that's the second of two. Where's the first one?
Manga.
Moving fast.
Great. It's 2 up from that. There we go.
So these are your opinions, and they don't really contribute to the conversation we're having. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying your opinions aren't valid. I definitely want to say opinions are valid, right? Like, if you think that there's some author that sometimes fucks their story and it ruins the entire series, and you've seen it a bunch of times, okay, I believe you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really have anything to do with what we're talking about. And there are definitely, without taking a poll, I would imagine there's definitely plenty of people that think that the comics or the manga you're talking about are great. And that, so when we're talking about subjective opinions like that, and then we're trying to have a conversation around the history of these terms and like why things are viewed a certain way, doesn't really have anything to do with it. Right.
Right. So on the subjective level, right? I read both manga and comics, and there are manga I like and manga I don't like, and there are Cape books that I like and Cape books that I don't like. But that's sort of subjective and sort of maybe something we talk on later if we have time. But we'll get to the fun bits.
Yeah, and like, so you say Western comic books could easily fix their mistakes, and I'm sure you have in mind a specific set of things that what that is, but I've definitely heard a lot of people say what they think the problems are, and I, for one, often disagree. For another, a lot of them don't. It's not. I'm not saying this is you, but I hear it a lot that certain things that just don't exist. It's not a thing that's really happening or has happened in comics, and they're like, that's the problem with comics. So
So before we go on, I have a couple of disclaimers. And so we're going to get into some people later on after we talk about some pre-internet stuff to set the groundwork. We're going to talk about some folks who believe that manga or anime supports their ideology. And my goal isn't to say, well, actually, anime agrees with all of my very specific values, because that's bullshit. I'm not an expert on Japanese culture, and my opinions are based on things that I've read and watched and my own perceptions.
It really seems like you're trying to get us to consider this with some nuance, Morgan. I don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah, I need to for my own sanity. My hope of today is to impress upon all of you listening. Hi, welcome, glad you're here. That it's easy to take a work of art's meaning out of context or paint the whole culture based on a small sample of it. An anecdote you will hear a lot from anime or manga fans or video game fans who go to Japan expecting it to be like a country of them. And it's just like, they're just like, wow, everyone treats me like I'm a weird nerd, because their weird nerds and our weird nerds are weird nerds kind of the same way. Like,
but also specific in certain ways, right? I would imagine.
Right.
So,
there's some differences, but the whole country isn't like just reading manga and playing Final Fantasy all the time. That's an awful
like everybody you
stereotype.
bump into is like you can talk to them about the newest, I don't know, One Piece or whatever.
Right. They're just gonna be like, I don't read that, I don't care. Because, and some people do, and good for them. I hear it's all right. It's not my jam. So now let's talk about the pre-internet days.
What?
You remember the pre-internet days? I know they happened, but like it's at the periphery of my memory.
I do remember it in the sense that like, so because I actually had access to internet, like regular access to it later than a lot of my friends and stuff. So like I have a pretty specific kind of just seeing my friends being involved in all these chat rooms and stuff like that. And every once in a while I'd spend the weekend at a friend's and I'd kind of get into a chat room or whatever and be like, oh, this is crazy. But yeah, that has nothing to do with anything. I'm just saying. You asked if I remember. So I do remember vaguely.
Okay. So did you know that so anime studios have been around since like what we think of as anime studios since like the 50s, right? And they've actually been in America for over 60 years.
Wow.
So I think a lot of people think of anime as this newer thing, but there are shows you probably watched growing up that were, if not anime, drawn by anime studios.
Can I take a guess at some?
Sure.
Speed Racer?
Yes, that is actually an anime that was adapted and brought over.
Let me see.
We talked about one that you just uploaded.
Transformers.
Transformers.
Yeah. Wasn't that based on GoBots or something? What was that about?
So Transformers is actually a bunch of different Japanese toys that existed and were repackaged and then given an animated series as the Transformers.
And westernized.
Yep. So, are you familiar with the real American hero, G.I. Joe?
I've heard of this man, yes.
Drawn by Japanese studios.
Crazy.
Are you familiar with the communist propaganda show Socialist Men Under Red Father, also known as the Smurfs?
No, I mean, I am aware of it. I didn't know that it was
I have a relative that was their they didn't want their kids to watch the Smurfs because they thought it was a secret acronym for Socialist Men Under Red Father.
Kind of like how KISS was Knights in Satan's Service.
Yes, exactly.
It's funny.
So, like, we're talking about, like, things we see as wholly American, right?
Yeah.
That line is blurry. And
so it's almost like you could say that those shows, those properties were almost like a foot in the door for just the eventual, like, you know, full-on anime manga emergence in the US. Like,
I would say it was, if I'm being perfectly honest, I think a lot of it was you had a lot of these toyetic cartoons, and you had a place where you could get animation done cheaply, and you had a country that didn't have a ton of capacity for animation, and so you hire out. Happens, it's just outsourcing, right?
yeah.
And then they, you get companies that import stuff. Transformers was a partnership between Hasbro and a Japanese company called Takara. A company that I have gone on to loathe, Harmony Gold, bought a bunch of animes and combined them into Robotech, which is probably a show you've heard of. It's from that era of here. Yeah. So that's 3 different unrelated animes that they did some gentle editing and Americanized the name, stitch it together so it was long enough for syndication. However, once you had American studios American publishing companies realizing, well, we can just do what Harmony Gold did, or what Hasbro did with the Transformers, and just license a property and bring it over. We don't have to bother writing a new script. We can just translate whatever they had into English and shove it out the door. And that brings us to Moral Panic the First. And that is American censorship laws.
Boy.
A lot of these shows, the ones that were purchased or licensed, were syndication length. So Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball, things that run for a long time, so you meet that episode count for syndication. So they could air on, your local broadcast TV in the middle of the afternoon or the early in the morning. And you had to meet the FCC's decency standards. And even when these companies began to put their shows on cable, they held to those standards because they didn't want to corrupt America's youth. And I have some funny examples. So in the sci-fi rom-com series Tenchi Muyo, which is about a nerd who, through various means, has a bunch of hot alien women that end up living with him and his family. There's a lot of those shows in Japan that's very horny. On the American release, they replaced all of the references to alcohol with something that would seem more appropriate for the demure Japanese: tea.
Oh.
But all this means is that these grown-ass men get drunk on tea in the show.
So there's just like no explanation for why
There's
they're
no
acting.
explanation for what's happening.
I mean, I guess you'd say it was like mushroom tea, maybe, or something.
Yeah, you could, but they let it. Yeah. There are lesbians in Sailor Moon, in the manga and the anime. Yep, they made it weird. So there are two lesbians, and it is not subtle. But because you can't have lesbians on a kid show, they were made into cousins, who do a lot of hugging and snuggling and holding hands, and it's lots of pretty bubbles and flowers, and
Not cousin behavior.
not cousin behavior.
I mean, maybe like fourth, fifth cousins, maybe, but yeah, definitely not first
yeah.
cousins. Okay.
So
Sorry, that was a joke, guys. Don't hug your, don't do that with any cousins. Okay?
no, it's
blood
weird.
tests, all that.
So yeah. So, but they turned a perfectly healthy lesbian romance into incest.
Fun times.
Yep, they made in Sailor Moon. They also made yep, they made a bunch of gay guys. Just yep. There's a lot of things in Sailor Moon that were changed because Sailor Moon is very sapphic. Outside of your main love interest characters, like her and the main dude are cis het, I imagine, but nobody else is. Yep, that's right. There's a lot of these funny censorship examples. Before we move on, last but not least, my favorite comes from Gundam, where Gundam is a show with a lot of it's a war drama, and so people get shot, they get blown up with lasers and missiles and machine guns, but in robots. So, but you can't have one of your characters hold like a real gun. So they badly animated like disco lights onto the guns to make them look like laser guns. But they still shoot bullets and you still bleed out like a bullet wound.
So they like half-assed did the G.I. Joe thing, but it's still just...
Yeah, right. Exact same sort of thing. And it's just like, all to meet these weird censorship standards because we do love our lesbians here at Actual Fandom.
We love all of our gays,
Absolutely.
But look, I'm not gonna lie. I have had a special appreciation for lesbians since I don't know, middle school or so, and
I had it since I read Sailor Moon.
It's so weird, by the way. I just wanted to point out, two things. This is the exact same thing that happened with the Comics Code,
right?
Where they're going to censor this thing because it's it's too terrible for kids to experience or whatever, and then it's like makes it worse in some bizarre way.
Yeah.
And then also, back in my day, we thought lesbians were cool, and like now these conservatives are like, oh, fucking gay kiss with two women. Like, yeah, what are you talking about?
Hot.
Like, you guys, if you're watching and you're like one of these freaking out every time there's a gay couple or something, and you've ever done that with like female characters, ask yourself, when did you get so uncool, man? Like,
yeah,
if you're of a certain age, you definitely appreciated like Wild Things and what was the other one?
I have no idea.
Cruel Intentions. Those both came out around the same time and had a couple of epic lesbian moments and stuff. And like, man, that was all the shit to kids of my age. And now you're like, ew, it's fucking woke and stuff. And it's like, man, stop being lame. All right, that's all.
Yeah. So yeah, like just all sorts of silly things. And this comes about because you have this, we're talking about the late 80s, early 90s. You have a demand in the market for more cartoons. And there's a whole country where you could just buy them pre-made. But you have to tweak them because this is still the Reagan Bush years, and you have to like get the moral guardian satisfied enough that they stop looking. And it's just enough, right? Like, oh, okay, that's not alcohol. Okay, but everyone is drunk when they drink the tea.
It almost draws more attention to it, to like where a young person might spend more time thinking and talking to their friends about it than they would if it was just
the tea one sticks out to me. Brother was watching Tenchi Muyo, and he's like, why are they drunk on tea? Because for various reasons. My brother and I knew at a young age what drunk people acted like, but he was young enough not to figure out what it was supposed to be. So it was like, oh yeah, no, that tea is probably just like some kind of alcohol.
Yep.
Yeah. And this gets a little crazier. And probably the biggest anime, manga, video game chimera comes onto the scene in the late 90s with Pokemon.
Oh. So, what? Okay, so here's the extent of my personal connection to like, well, not really manga at all, but like anime. Was in high school, I would rush home after school to watch Dragon Ball Z.
Sure.
And there's like a 1.5 year period there where that was my shit. And it was basically, it's like a soap opera to me because it kind of is
for
just
sure,
a soap opera. And I was like, oh god, what's gonna happen on today's episode? And well, not much. They kind of just stood there yelling at each other for half an hour, but maybe next episode. Anyway,
maybe someone will throw a punch.
So, but I still loved it. And like, then I got into looking at, like some of the some Dragon Ball, and watched the the original Dragon Ball and stuff. And there's definitely some stuff in there that was yikes.
Oh yeah.
And I guess I don't know. Did that come before? Was that in the US before Pokemon, or how did that happen?
That was before. I think
Okay.
Dragon Ball was out and was brought over to the States before Pokemon. I believe DBZ was at as well.
Okay.
But I think DBZ sort of took off at about the same time in the States with because that was when Cartoon Network was getting really big.
Yeah.
And they had anime in the afternoon.
All right. Yeah, I was just trying to orient myself in the timeline here. So
I see what you did there. All right, so Pokemon, if you don't know about Pokemon, who are you? Look, I don't expect everyone to have played it, but you know it exists. So we get a few fun panics, two of which get some Orientalism, and one is just good old-fashioned religious zealotry. And that religious zealots are all kind of the same, regardless of if they're East or West. So, in Pokemon, for those who don't know, I don't know, Dane, do you know Pokemon at all?
there's something about balls, and you put your animals in them, and then they fight each other. It's like basically like a
fighting, yeah.
It's dog fighting for children, right?
Right. That's exactly it. So one of the things that happens to your Pokemon if you do a lot of dog fighting with them, if you're a furry, you know about Pokemon. I see you there. It says Fury Notes. I can read. I sit corrected. So when you dogfight with your Pokemon enough, they will level up and then evolve. And there are
into very traumatized dogs? Or
sorry. Sometimes, yeah.
Sorry. I'm gonna leave that alone.
Sometimes, yeah. Well, yeah, because they will. So evolution in Pokemon doesn't work like evolution in real life, where over the course of thousands of generations, creatures will pass on the most useful adapted traits through trial and error. This is a cute little creature evolves into a more powerful but often less cute critter through the power of dogfighting. And despite this not being how real evolution works, there are some people in the world who have they get upset when someone teaches kids about evolution. And here, yes, Pokemon was inspired by bug catching. Here in the States, those are Christian fundamentalists. You may have heard of them. I think they've come up on the show a few times now. If we talked about fundies.
Yeah, they've been, they're kind of somewhat of always lingering, always right there in the shadows. But yeah, they peek out.
Yeah, they peek out every now and again. So,
oh boy, I think we have a real one. Is this a real
we
one?
got a real one. We got one on the
a real
line.
one?
Reel them in.
Wow. I mean, I hope you're joking, but if not, then thank you for showing up just to like show that you exist, because like
I'm happy for you to represent yourself here, and I will try to minimally make fun of you if that is the case.
I will make fun of you a lot if you're really saying this, then I will definitely just roast you mercilessly, because holy shit, that is insanity. Anyway.
Dane is the bad host to my good host.
Okay, okay, cool.
Yeah, I figured, but because we don't do cops around here.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, because literally, like that's what this show is about, is basically making fun of. We're not making fun of. That's part of it. That's like the candy that I get for it. But like, yeah, generally it is just looking at the history of people being irrationally against things that are usually pretty cool or just like harmless.
So the Christian fundamentalists got upset, claiming that Pokemon was trying to teach their kids evolution, Darwinian evolution in the form of Pikachu. I think what the real problem is, I have a theory based on some folks I know, and I know a lot of folks who spent time in that era in Christian schools, and the problem is kids aren't paying attention to Bible study when they could be trading Pokemon cards. Like, I think that was the real issue, but like
probably, yeah.
Say that, but like
you're roboting a bit. I don't know if you got a bad connection or something, but
check the wires.
It was just for a minute. I think you're okay now, generally. Anyway, it's as far as this goes, Superman, Goku, they people like to talk about this as being a problem with these characters, and I don't think that's accurate. I think that it's a problem for writers if they're not like clever enough, I suppose. But I mean, so like I said, I used to watch DBZ, and I noticed what I eventually started calling. I made Goku into a verb, right? So like anytime, and I would notice it on other shows, pretty much, anything where there's a very powerful character, and especially when the character gets more powerful, or shows, comics, whatever it is, movies. Like for instance, at the end of The Matrix Reloaded, Neo gets Goku.
Right.
So it's like where they have to take him out of the story so that the story can actually progress and they can set some stakes. Because otherwise, this powerful character, wouldn't he just come in and solve all the problems, right?
Right.
And so they would have to do that with Goku a lot, and that's when I really noticed it as a narrative thing. So that's what I called it, even though it's definitely existed before Goku. Anyway,
we used the Dragon Ball Z reference in our role playing groups when a story went on too long, and that's that the story is now stuck on Namek because they go to that other planet after everyone gets beat up by Vegeta to do something. I forget what it is, but it's just like if it just sort of drags on and on and on and on and on. It's like, oh, yeah, the story is now stuck on Namek. And I am going to try not to get distracted by all of these things in chat that I could go on about.
Yes. Welcome to my world, Morgan.
I am here to do a thing. And people are geeking in chat, and I am a geek at heart. I would love to geek, but I need to
Here's what I'll do.
I will outline. Okay.
I will save any comments that seem like it's something you might want to address, and I'll probably miss some, but
all right. I'm just going to pull my thing over to private chat and just, bye chat. I miss you. I love you. Sorta. All right. So the Christians got upset about this because, I mean, they're Christians. Young Earth creationists and evolution go together like shit on toast. I don't know. It makes them upset that the world is older than they think by orders of magnitude. That's just how it be. It did also get some biologists worked up because that is not how fucking evolution works. But being people with real stuff to do, they mostly went, well, that's fucking dumb, and moved on with their lives. Second, and this gets into some more Orientalism, because Pokemon they're a little more powerful and varied in what they can do than a dog. And so this led to claims of Pokemon teaching kids about witchcraft and how to summon Satan, because obviously you throw your ball and out comes a buddy, and that buddy might be scary or might have psychic powers or breathe fire, and clearly that's Satanism.
Yeah, and then the natural, of course, reaction to that is,
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Exactly. That is literally what happened. Yeah, so they got very upset about that, teaching their kids Satan. That Pokemon has no. Let me roll that back. Pokemon has very little way of like a hard and fast religious anything, because it's a kid's game. Like, there are mythical Pokemon that are probably godlike, but not like worshipped like a god. There's no church, Church of Arceus, or the something, whatever, you get it, right?
Yep.
None of that going on. So
let me ask you a question real quick, not to distract too much, but like do you think that there's like a contingent of people who are just waiting for the next big kids thing to come along so that they can apply their satanic panic to it?
There has to be
like a cynical. I mean, I know that some of them probably are definitely wacky enough to believe that or whatever, but like, I just feel like there's some bit of influence, kind of like the same way with like anti-fans, that like the YouTubers generally, I think, know what they're doing, right, and that they're full of shit, but then a lot of the audience doesn't know that. I kind of feel like there's probably something similar with the church, whatever church it is, and they're just like, oh look, this Pokemon thing is huge. Let's go ahead and do a panic on this one.
Well, yeah, it's the pay attention to me, right? They don't really care about the issue. They just want to put butts in pews, right? Because that means tithing money, and that means suckers. They don't really, because like we've talked about it before, they, with a lot of these things, they have at best a tangential, like they have just the surface level knowledge, right? Like, if I told you in a panic, Dane, Pokemon is teaching kids evolution, and that was a problem, you didn't like teaching kids evolution, but you were otherwise someone who was measured and tempered in their responses, you go, okay, well, show it to me. And then in the middle of two cartoon critters duking it out, one of them glows and gets a little bigger and a different shade of red, you'd be like, I don't know what the fuck I'm watching. This doesn't look like evolution.
Yeah, I mean, I can. Sadly, I can kind of almost see how, if I was really dumb, I would think that would be just like a beginner's introduction to evolution,
right?
But like, that's really dumb. You'd have to kind of be an idiot, or I don't know. But that's giving it too much credit, honestly.
Right.
But yeah.
But there's a
by
lot
the way,
of.
We did. Let's see. Where's that? One second. We've covered both of those things on here on the podcast.
The D&D episode is on the Forced Adversity podcast YouTube channel, or no?
It is.
Right.
It is. By the way, I'm beginning to upload episodes to the Forced Adversity podcast channel. So at least for now, the live episodes will be on this channel. But if you want to catch any back episodes, of which there's plenty, and I'm going to be uploading them steadily. You can check that out.
The Harry Potter one, I think, is it still on this channel when we did the live stream about Harry Potter?
I don't remember if I kept it.
Okay. Well, it was here.
It will be there's going to be a bunch over the next couple of weeks. There's going to be a lot of cool episodes going up there. You should check them out. A lot of interesting things about people panicking over nothing.
I think my favorite one we've done, or that I've led on, that I hope you guys listen to, is the one on Mary Sue's.
Yes, and that is going to be up next. That's the next one I'm uploading. And
awesome.
I might actually upload a good bit of it to this channel, just because we had a really great conversation with that.
Yeah, we did. That was awesome.
And we got to the bottom of the Mary Sue thing, right? And it, like, honestly, I think any rational person who is just not completely lost in the sauce of algorithmic poison would hear this and hear the history of this word and like how it's devolved in a way. Or become, and go, this is not really a thing the way that people act like it is.
Right. It goes from this like very specific thing to like a more broad fan fiction term to poop, like literally just vomiting on the wall. So yeah, I check that out when Dane puts it up. I love doing that one, and everyone was great on it. So yeah. Anyways, back to fundamentalists. We get some other fundamentalists who kind of say the same thing. Remember that Eastern country talked about Saudi Arabia a minute ago?
Yeah. They're like in the east, but the middle?
The middle of it, right.
Yeah.
So the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia banned Pokemon in 2001.
I mean, look, honestly, that's not the most surprising thing because they've like up until recently they had banned women driving.
True. Do you want to know why they banned it?
Pokemon or women driving?
Pokemon.
Oh, yeah. Why?
They claimed, completely just making it up whole cloth, that Pokemon smuggles Judaism into a civilization. It is just some rank, stinky ass anti-Semitism.
Wow. Hold on. Let me see if I can. I don't know anything about it. I'm trying to think if I can pinpoint what kind of trope they would latch onto. Is it like the Golem thing? The Golem?
Oh,
thing?
No. It is. They think the word Pokemon means like Judaism is correct.
Oh, well, that's even crazy. See, I was giving it too much benefit.
You were giving it too much credit, right? It is literally they just made something up.
See, I thought it would be like, you release a golem, right? Like you're
right, yeah.
And nope,
there's
not
a
that.
Pokemon called Golem, and you think, oh, okay, so that's smuggling in Judaism. No, they never got that far. They just made something up.
Well,
so
I mean, to be fair, it's all religion is. But moving on.
Yeah, true, but don't want to take anyone to the mat for that. So there is one sort of nuanced issue that we get with Pokemon and some racism. And I think that the critics of this are well-meaning. I sort of see how we all got there. And that involves a Pokemon called Jinx. And I probably should pull up pictures for our watching audience. All right, so I'm going to pop into our Discord chat and send you some friendly pictures. Copy image. All right, this is the first one. And then this is the second. And I think as soon as you see the second one, Dane, you will understand where the issue arises.
Are you sending them to me right now?
Yep, they are in our Discord.
Oh my god.
Discord.
Okay. Yeah.
So why don't we show the fine viewers that?
Which one first?
Do the first one first.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that one. So if you play a Pokemon game that comes out recently, it'll look like what Dane's about to show you. All right, this blonde purple lady with opera singer tits.
That's what I was thinking. Opera singer for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Show the other one.
Okay.
This is the original art.
Smaller file here, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, it's it's older. It's not high. There's not high definition pictures of this. This is from the 90s. So that's the OG.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. See, it's not going to scale well.
Well.
So who here sees the problem?
I think I do.
That is some blackface right there.
Yeah, it's like there's a name for that. I forget what it is. It's awful shit.
Yeah.
So I forget the name, but like there's a yeah. It reminds me of what's his name from Dragon Ball Z actually.
Mr. Popo.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was there a problem? Like people have a problem with Mr. Popo because he definitely kind of.
They changed Mr. Popo's skin color at some point. He had to be more purpley than black. So that is it is inspired. I think Mr. Popo is inspired similarly by a Japanese fashion style that was sort of a niche at some point in Japanese history. with the painting your face black and the blonde hair. I don't know the history of it entirely, but it wasn't meant to hit on certain tropes that we here in America are more familiar with. But when you bring it over here, people are going to go, wait a fucking second. You're doing blackface.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that. I don't know the history either, but it does kind of stand to reason that, you know, considering they don't have the historical and cultural experience with with black people that we do, that
right?
They might look to us and see what we're doing, and like, oh, that's what they do with black people, like, so,
right? Exactly.
They're doing that, so let's do that. And I don't know. That's just a guess. So,
and the Pokemon Company took the criticism and went, you know what? Okay, we're gonna noodle this. We're gonna fix this. This, you know, oops, we want to be an international franchise, and we now understand why this is a problem. So we're gonna make some adjustments, and they did. And now it's the Purple Lady and
minstrel. That's what I was thinking of.
Yep, minstrel shows.
Yeah, yikes.
Yeah, because, yikes on trikes.
Yeah, I mean, because Law 3000 says it's not a big deal, and it's like, no, not necessarily to me and you, but it's not really a direct harm to anyone. It's like what it is potentially it could be used as a propaganda. You know, it perpetuates an old, actually harmful stereotype that existed during a time when there was direct harm related to it, and we just kind of want to move past those things. So, you know, there's there's also no problem. It's not a big deal to have them not be black either. Right. It's the fix was we made it purple. Yeah. That's it. Not a big deal, but not a big deal to fix either. So it all works out. So cool. What's a dying culture? What? I don't know. I shouldn't get too involved in chat right now. Sorry. Okay, I have a very active chat. It's fucking awesome. By the way, I see that. Chat is like, since I turned chat off and said I missed you, there's like 100 messages. So you guys are fucking going crazy over there, and I'm a little jelly I can't participate, so I can focus. It kind of makes me think I just need to like shoehorn manga and anime into every piece of content I do, so that maybe I can get a little, boost the numbers a little bit. Well, hey, if you're new here, like and subscribe. If you're new here and you like Dan a lot, you can subscribe on Patreon. Yeah, that's the thing you can do. I'm uploading lots of cool stuff over there at Patreon that you can only see on Patreon as a supporter. Yep. And that's going to continue. I've got like, I don't know, 25 streams from the past 6 months that I'm clipping stuff from, to upload. And it's going to be plenty of content. Some stuff you probably haven't seen before. There's definitely a video over on the Initiative channel that no one had seen before, because it's the first one that we've done, aside from the mission statement, that was not done on live stream. We recorded it off stream, and it is about these several review websites, if you want to call them that are basically like Rotten Tomatoes for people who want to know if something's woke or not. And we looked at several of them. A couple of them didn't work so well. Like, they're really badly designed and crashed and didn't want to load. But yeah, it was fun. Yeah. So we can get back on topic. All right. Yes. So we're going to do it. So now we get into manga a little bit. Well, not a little bit. So manga, for those who don't know, is a type of comic book. There, I said it. What? No, it's a completely different thing. It's a different thing from a different place. Therefore, it competes with the thing that is different from a different place, right? So Dane, a comic strip, is that a comic? No. Why not? God damn it! It is. It is. No, so it's a sequential panels, right? You have the sequential little boxes. And you've got the drawn characters in a cartoonish style of different techniques with little word bubbles that explain what's going on. Right? Yep. Yeah. Sounds about right. So
as anime grew popular, so before anime really boomed, there was manga often sold in comic stores. Wonder why that is. Like the first manga I bought, comic store. Some manga I bought last year, comic store.
I mean, it would be like saying that anime is not a cartoon.
Right, exactly. And I know some
You know.
very self-serious weebs who will insist that.
Well,
And
you
then
know,
I
if they
will
want to get
point and
hyper,
laugh at them.
you know, I mean, they're not even really technically correct to say that it's not a cartoon.
They're not.
Like it's not. It's actually incorrect to say that. So if they want to die on that hill, you know, at least they're dying.
At least they're dying, right? So, and as time has gone on, in the same way that anime was brought over here because, hey, the work is already done, we can just translate it and put it out. You got that with manga too. And there's a lot of really good manga. And like American comics, manga isn't one thing, right? Not all manga is Dragon Ball Z.
What?
Dragon Ball Z is part of a broad genre of manga called shonen,
Which I know it refers to Shonen Jump.
no, Shonen Jump is a place where you get shonen stories.
I know nothing then. Okay.
Haha, you're learning. Now you know something. We have corrected some misunderstandings. Look at us go. We're doing the thing. So where is my little... Okay, so now tell me if this sounds familiar about shonen stories. These often feature young men with magical or supernatural abilities dressed in colorful outfits fighting. This sound like anything you've read before?
Well, yeah, I mean, to sell that point, I didn't even really notice this until I made this thumbnail. In my mind, the thumbnail for this stream, I was like, well, the most, you know, generally the thing that I'm seeing said a lot lately is that One Piece is catching up and it's going to surpass Superman in terms of units sold. And that, you know, so those seem to be the representatives of their various, formats, right? So I put those in the thumbnail, and Morgan pointed out that, let me see if I can get us in a different, there we go. It's a lot of
there we go.
color overlap there. I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't change any of the color on this stuff. It's just like I grabbed these two images, and there's some similarities in terms of the colors. So definitely the One Piece character looks kind of insane compared to Superman.
Yeah.
But
So you can't see Luffy's pants, but they're blue. So it's the same, like literally the same sort of color palette, right? The blue and the red with the yellow. Which
kind of tells us, it suggests like heroism, right?
Right. It's the primary color sort of hero. Isn't it a pretty old trope at this point?
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're kind of the same thing. Like the stories are different, the characters are different, their weaknesses are equally absurd. So if you don't know, Luffy, I can never pronounce it right. I don't read.
It's pronounced One Piece. His name is One Piece.
His Mr. One Piece.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I don't know.
So his weakness, he's a pirate, right?
Mm-hmm.
His powers don't work if he's in water.
So you could kind of just like that. That also that's crazy.
Right.
He's a pirate, so he spends a lot of time on water, I imagine.
On water, yeah. But if he were to fall into the water, he would then not have his magic powers. Kind of like Superman's, big weakness is chunks of his home planet that flew through space across the great void and ended up on Earth, and they're radioactive only to him.
So it's actually kind of interesting. Like I don't know much about really at all about the One Piece, but hearing that is intriguing,
right? Isn't it?
It's a character, a tweak on a character that it's like it's ironic, it's kind of absurd, but it's also, I imagine, is groundwork for some pretty fun story moments, right?
Yeah, it's like my issue with stories like One Piece and like Dragon Ball Z is that shonen stories, because the manga industry is fucking brutal.
Yeah.
Because it is usually a weekly release schedule. And the individual releases aren't as big as a comic book typically. But it's also done typically by one person, and if they are important enough to the magazine they work for, maybe some assistants. But typically one person is doing all the sketching, all the lines, all the dialogue, week after week, 52 weeks a year.
So I was talking to somebody recently. I'm trying to remember who it was. I wish I would have grabbed a clip or whatever, but like, apparently, yeah, you say it's pretty brutal. I've heard from a couple of people now that it's they don't pay them well. They overwork the shit out of them.
Yep.
And it's like, so when people are just throwing around that, manga's doing better, and it's like, okay, is your only metric is profit? Then cool, but that's not really like a good sole metric. Like how are the people doing? And it's like, in that regard, Western comics creators, quotes there, American superhero comics creators don't get what they deserve.
No.
Period, for what they create. However, they are paid a fucking pretty decent living wage. Generally. And it's, of course, it's usually gig work. You know what I mean? But like someone like Mark Brooks, who has a contract with Marvel, I think exclusive now. And he's just doing covers nonstop and shit like that. He's doing all right.
But this is also gig work, because if your story isn't a hit, it's just going to get canceled and they'll replace it with the next thing, right? So like, your options are, to chase the gig, or if you succeed, then you're burning yourself out, ruining your back. A lot of these people have really bad backs because they're hunched over all the time. Like it's rough.
Yeah.
But because of that, like these shonen shows and manga go on forever, and so they're a little repetitive, and it's just sort of not my jam. I like more truncated, like Hellsing is one that I think of, where it's 6 volumes. It's a contained story. It's a good time. We'll get to Hellsing a little later. But so shonen, the big genre we're talking about, is just one of several genres. So you have things like Sailor Moon, which is more targeted at girls and women. That's actiony, but sort of less so and more character focused. You have comedy stories. Have you heard of Junji Ito?
I have not. But holy shit, what?
Yeah. It fucking, he worked himself to death.
That's fucking crazy. That's berserk, man. But I mean, like, when was this?
I forget when.
Is it recent or?
I forget when he died.
There's a whole lot of, I don't know, I have a whole lot of problems, maybe questions about this comment, as often with your comments. I'm just not sure where there's certain things are coming from. Generally, I wouldn't refer to, people of different, countries as being, like different breeds, and like that's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's a little,
I don't know,
a little cringe.
But also,
he died in 2001.
Oh, okay. Wow, shit. Zeb Wells, what has he done? And also, how do you know there's no mean authors working on? I mean, they don't have time to be mean, apparently.
Oh, and there are absolutely mean people working in that industry. So I sent you a picture from Junji Ito. He's probably the most famous horror manga writer. Why don't you share that with chat?
Yeah,
or maybe not.
You gotta find larger images.
I am just in the Googles, so I'm sorry.
I know it is hard to find good.
I wish I would have thought to pull them ahead of time, but I did not.
Yeah. Wow. That's a tiny little bastard. All right.
Yeah, so yeah, this is the works of Junji Ito. Just absolutely like crazy body horror shit. So manga is all over the place, from all ages to things your nightmares have nightmares about.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, like, I remember being pretty disturbed when I saw this is anime, you know, and I saw it when I was in maybe middle school, and you might not have heard of it. Probably nobody has. I don't know. But it had like, it was really some disturbing moments, and I was like, what the fuck? It's called Akira.
Oh yeah, that one's a little fucked up.
Yeah,
kind of a
little
big
indie
deal.
movie, I think.
Yeah, a little.
Had
Well,
virtually no impact on anything, I don't think so.
in Japan, it didn't. Japan, it flopped.
Wow.
They brought it over here to make up lost revenue, and it was a hit.
Crazy.
Yeah.
No, I definitely really liked it when I saw it, by the way.
Oh,
I saw that and Ghost in the Shell. A guy showed them to me in one weekend, and I was like, oh my God, this is great stuff.
I love Ghost in the Shell.
And then from there, it was like Vampire Hunter D. And then apparently, like, I've just talked to people since then that's just the three main ones that people were introduced to anime with.
Mm-hmm. Those were three of certainly the ones that sort of initially had the most staying power in that, like, mid-90s hyper violent period of anime. And unfortunately I can't get it to load. In 1999, I'll send you the link, but
okay.
I read it on my iPad during the week, and now the link tells me I need to subscribe to the assholes. The Wall Street Journal did an article in 1999 about violent Japanese cartoons ruining kids' minds.
Yeah, I can't subscribe. I mean, I can't get in there either without.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, we can show the headline and show that this was
drop the headline.
The real thing. I mean, the article, the headline.
Yeah, the article is real. Their panic is, real.
And then, I mean, I maybe I can find in some way like what it says elsewhere while we're talking, but I am interested in that actually. I want to see how they kind of weave that narrative.
Yeah. So
you got to think. By the way, you got to think. You know what else they were worried about on December 3rd, 1999? They're freaking the fuck out about Y2K.
Columbine. Oh, that too. Yeah.
So just, Columbine, yes, but just like in terms of things that I guess we're gonna have to do an episode about that. By the way, we should.
Yeah, I know.
Like it's just the most obvious example of like people were certain that things were gonna happen that didn't happen.
Right. So I think I know what we should do. We should do Y2K for our New Year's show this year, like we did the Christmas. We're on Christmas last year. We should do a New Year's show with
brilliant
with Y2K.
Brilliant idea. This is why I pay you the big bucks.
Yep. Double my wage right now.
Okay. Done.
Fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate it. So yeah. Manga is kind of like the rest of comics, not just one thing. It is not just our pirate boy here who can't swim. It is kids stories and horror stories and war dramas and love stories.
Well, that's kind of speaks to what this comment is claiming, right? It's like, for one thing, this is just so subjective and there's no way to measure that. But if that's how you feel, okay. But like, the fact is, you're probably thinking of, comic books as a specific thing of like superheroes because it is the most prominent. It sells the best. You know what I mean? But there are so many comics that are, Western American,
right,
and else UK comics that have nothing to do with cape shit tights, and they're fucking great. There's like a lot of the biggest creators who work on mainstream superhero comics get their start doing kind of weird, completely non-superhero related thing that's awesome.
So have you read any French comics?
Not we. Sorry, I was trying to think of what no is in French.
So I had a friend in college who was really into French comics. The gal who lived across the hall from my dorm. And despite not being able to read a word of it, the art, the character designs, everything was so varied and wildly different. So when we talk about Western comics, like that's is France a Western country in your mind when you talk about Western comics, or you really just mean our big blue Boy Scout here? Like you need to know when you say Western comics, you got to define that for me, because like you have these very colorful, bright, wild art stories that are just beautiful. You have the gritty 82,000 stuff out of the UK. Some of that's black and white like manga, right? Like same sort of art style in some ways. Like they definitely there's some parallels there.
So here's just a list of 23 non-superhero comics.
Saga's a
definitely
classic.
Very, very good. Very not superhero. East of West, that's a weird one. That's Hickman.
Hickman, so
he does weird stuff, and I'm usually down with it. But like that's one of the ones that I not as much as what's the news one? I forget the name.
I don't. Oh, DMZ or no?
No, it's Nightly News, I think it is.
Oh, okay. I haven't read that.
That one is so weird. I couldn't crack it. East of West, I could read it, but it was still a bit of a challenge. There's a spectrum of Hickman weirdness. Fables, good stuff.
Oh, I love Fables. I love Fables.
Walking Dead. Few people have heard of that.
Walking Dead, probably the most famous comic TV show.
Watson and Holmes.
Yeah. There's Neil Gaiman did a comic that it's called A Study in Emerald. It's Sherlock Holmes, but in a Victorian London that was ruled over by like Cthulhu monsters.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That does sound cool. Yeah.
It's a fucked up story. It's good. Preacher is one I could never get my head around. I didn't really care for that one.
I enjoyed it back in the day. I don't know that I would enjoy it again. I did read it all the way through, so I've read the entirety of it. So like these are all comics these are typically comic book nerds, not just like some people that read comic books, but like comic book nerds will read this stuff. And then also sometimes the superhero stuff, but like the superhero stuff has always been what keeps the industry afloat.
Right. At least since they murdered horror comics.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And so it's like the superhero comics do all the foundational work to keep the industry going, so that then weirdos can write weird shit like about a detective that can taste clues by eating stuff.
That's crazy.
Or whatever that's about. I love the industry. I love the dynamic of it. I love that superhero comics. I love superhero comics. I think they're great, generally good. And the thing is, even within superhero comics, it's frustrating because yes, we're sitting here saying that hey, it's not all superhero comics. It could be very different.
But even superhero comics are
very, very
different. Like one of my favorite superhero characters, at least as far as the DC side goes, is Green Lantern. Like some of the first comics I read were my grandpa had a bunch of old Alan Scott comics, and then I read the newer stuff, starting with like the Kyle Rayner stuff, and then when Hal Jordan came back, that's so wildly different than like Superman. And it's also a story you can only tell in comics, right? Because it's all these, just like crazy sci-fi, crazy magic, the blending of the two, all of the colors and the constructs. And you can sort of take the time to study it, right? Like you can look at the pages and the panels and the art, and all of it's so thought out. So yeah,
and that's
none of that's like Batman.
Kind of what we're addressing is like,
yeah,
that comic kind of doesn't make much sense when you think about it from the terms of like, okay, Transmetropolitan Preacher is what, a genre compared to superheroes?
Those are different genres because Preacher's like an urban fantasy and Transmetropolitan is like neo-noir, not quite cyberpunk.
Perfect example I can give of this is in this modern era of Krakoa and X-Men. So here's your Hickman minute.
Here's the Hickman minute. We did it.
Hickman era X-Men. You had two events that you had. Well, okay, let's start with House of X, Powers of 10. Just the beginning of the Hickman era. Very, very sci-fi, like almost hard sci-fi. The concepts that were being written in there were like, there's all these file dumps, which I love, that Hickman was putting in there about like what different forms of civilizations are and AI and all this crazy shit. It's like, that's hard sci-fi shit. And then the first real event of the Krakoa era was pretty magical based.
X of Swords is
Swords. It's they're like fighting for fantasy worlds and shit like that. And
You
it's
know what
like,
it is?
those are two different genres, the same characters, but the genres are pretty different. You know,
when DBZ does it, or Dragon Ball did it more than DBZ, but like they've done it in DBZ as well. When they have those like tournament arcs where the characters will fight off with different characters, sort of one at a time. Really, sort of a crossover there, huh? Yeah, Saga does not have any superheroes. So
if there's a current Krakoa arc that's bad, I don't know what it is. Like, I mean, I'm not like literally current, but if you're talking about the entirety of the Krakoa era, then I think you are mistaken. I will fight.
I would say it like there is some bad because there's always going to be like less good comics, but I think overall it's even the recent stuff since Hickman has moved on has been better than your average X-Men book, right? Like
I still believe that some of these X-Men stories, you just generally that here it is. Here's a hot take. And I know that on the internet, especially if you're someone who's not inclined to think that comics are in a good state or whatever, I think we're in a kind of a golden age of comic books.
I don't think you're wrong.
And if you are thinking of comics in a specific way of like it's just superhero comics and those are bad, then you're not broadening horizons about what comics exist. And also you might be kind of wrong just about superhero comics. But also, there's always been bad and good, and so on and so forth, and yeah.
So I think we're sort of getting to a good point for you to talk about the asshole responsible for this manga versus comics, and then we can talk about why he's wrong.
Well, so it's a good opportunity for me to continue playing that video from the beginning.
Because Part 2, now for the thrilling conclusion.
Yeah, so I cut into it right when I was about to reveal, and you know, I'm so sure some of you know who it is, who it was, who it will be. That specifically, because you know, look, for those who don't know, I have a background in journalism. That doesn't mean a whole lot, but it does. There's not a lot I'm proud of about what I am able to do. But one of them is that I'm pretty damn good at researching shit. If I want to find the source of a claim or any kind of bit of information, I can usually trace it to as far back as it can go. So I did that with the manga versus comics thing back in 2021 because I kept seeing it, and I started doing this content in late 2019, started addressing Comicsgate, and people would say, well, the industry's dying and stuff like that, just in this general, and I'd look and I'd go, okay, I don't think so. But we only had like 1 year of information to kind of combat that. But still, they said it. And then suddenly after 2020 and the numbers came out for 2020 and it was like, holy shit. Because like I said in that video, I really expected the industry to do poorly.
Every industry did.
Yeah. But turns out
for that in video games for some weird
when
reason.
People don't have much to do and they're, even when they don't have much money to spend, apparently that was the thing that I thought was going to really damage it. But people turned to comics. Well, they also turned to another thing that we're going to kind of touch on here too. But yeah, people turned to comics. They started buying graphic novels, people who hadn't bought comics before, so on and so forth. And then I started seeing more of this claim about, well, this is why manga is doing so much better than comics and they're destroying comics. And it's like this idea that they're in competition kind of frustrated me because I'm like, what are you talking about? Can you give me an example of, first of all, can you prove that this matters in some way? But like, considering that comic sales also rise, they're not like fucking epically rising every year the way that manga has, but manga's been doing that for like a decade.
Right.
So the source of the claim, as far as I can find, and I didn't know if you were going to look into it too, Morgan, and try and support or challenge that, but
as far as I could tell with what I was able to look at it, is you were correct.
Yeah. So, without further ado,
hit it.
What do you mean? You don't know? I don't know. I literally know because I literally read a lot of it. I know all of this, and it's awesome. They have fixed the problem of death in comics, actually. And I will fucking die and be reborn through a Krakoan resurrection on this hill, okay? Yeah, death had been dead in comics since Superman.
Right.
Basically, like once they killed Superman and brought him back, the idea that a superhero could die kind of lost a lot of power. And every once in a while, they do it. And it's like, now there's actually stakes again,
So-
if you die in the wrong place, you might not get resurrected.
There are rules to how dying works.
Exactly.
I remember when I started reading comics, there was a firm rule that, you know, even after Superman had come back from the dead, that you couldn't bring back 3 people: Uncle Ben, Jason Todd, and Bucky Barnes.
Bucky Barnes and Gwen Stacy.
Oh, and Gwen Stacy. And so, you know, Spider-Gwen and Winter Soldier and Red Hood, those characters don't exist. That never happened, right?
Well,
I'm literally not seeing a movie with Ghost Spider next weekend.
To be fair, that she is multiverse Gwen. She's not the Gwen.
True.
So that's kind of
But
a
she's
cheat,
rad.
but it's fine. She is good. I think Bucky Barnes being Winter Soldier is universally agreed as like, okay, that's a good retcon.
It's a good retcon. The Jason Todd one, we're not going to get into it. That is outside the scope of our mandate.
What I think it is how much does the death define the character that we're following?
Yeah.
I think that's really the sticking point. Because, like, yeah, Bucky dying it sucked, but I think it was even done retroactively too.
Yeah, I think so.
So it wasn't even done in like real time. It was whenever they brought Captain America back.
Right.
And we're like, oh, so Bucky died back then. But then you got Gwen Stacy or Uncle Ben, who are like pretty crucial to Peter Parker being who he is. And to remove that would be kind of insulting to the character and damaging to it. But
and then also foundational to how all of the different clones, like the actual clones of Peter Parker, are, because they all have like some recollection of that mattering to them, and how it influences, you know, Ben Reilly and Kane.
I'm gonna this is gonna be the last time I'm gonna address this, but I do want to before we move on to the thing we're actually talking about. The last thing that I've read like comprehensively was everything in and around Judgment Day, in which they began to use resurrection. They used it on Captain America. Spoiler alert. You know, they used it, and that they also said that they were going to start giving it to humans. You know, it just kind of as they're able to, basically a priority list kind of thing, which is also problematic in its own way. Nonetheless, I'm cool with it because death didn't mean anything. Now there's a narrative reason for death to for resurrection to happen. So it's not just like, oh, everybody's coming back to life for no reason. There's a in-story reason for it. And also there's very likely possibility that sometime in the future, Krakoan resurrection is going to stop happening.
That's going to go away.
Okay, like that's going to be a dramatic fucking storyline, I'm sure, whenever, because it relies on 5 mutants to just not die in some way they can't be brought back. You know, like they have a... Sorry.
I know you're not caught up, but like the whole Sins of Sinister thing is like, this resurrection thing has some security issues, and exploited. They go tits up in a hurry, and this was a really bad idea the whole time.
Exactly. That's another thing, is it created Sins of Sinister is bonkers. It's comic
wild.
Books at its kind of best and craziest in a way, because it goes fucking crazy, and it's only possible because he had, spoiler alert, gotten his own Moira clone, and you know, basically been bringing them back to life, where she would live a new life, and he would do kinds of stuff with that life, and then it didn't work, kill her.
Yeah,
and then
he'd kill the clone, she goes back, and then it would download into Sinister's computer, and then he'd start all over again.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. It's such a wild... It's a story you can only tell in comics. All right, so
this has been your Hickman 20 minutes, and
it's been our Hickman half hour. Sorry, I mean it's a comics episode. We were gonna talk Hickman.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised we got as far as we did.
We got really far, but I also want to talk about So yeah, go ahead and talk about your asshole.
Yeah, on the spectrum of comic book creators, on one end you got Hickman, as far as great and like. Very fucking cool guy. He's got a lot of cool ideas and does cool stuff.
You know what? I'm going to disagree on one thing. What? His Avengers run was absolutely mid.
I guess so. Maybe. But on the other end of the spectrum, you got a guy who, honestly, he probably should have just kind of gone away after he stopped getting work. But apparently he feels entitled, like a lot of these guys do. And let's hear about him. This disingenuous concern trolling is like the vast majority of Comicsgate creators. a washed-up, older white dude who had marginal success earlier on but has since been relegated to deceiving fans for outrage dollars. Not only that, but he's a proponent of the cult conspiracy represented by the letter you see here. Can't really say it, or this video will get taken down. Chuck Dixon was actually more than marginally successful, to be fair. He had some pretty definitive runs on Punisher and Batman in the 90s. In particular, he was the most prolific Batman writer of that entire decade. He ushered in several iconic Bat family members such as Stephanie Brown and Tim Drake Robin. He's also the creator of the character Bane. Chuck Dixon, like most Comicsgate creators, if you examine their bibliography timelines, slowly began to get less work. It's relevant because this is a pattern with Comicsgate creators, as they almost universally saw their jobs decrease over the years after having some success in the field. And they've only been able to regain recognition and probably income by embracing the outrage culture and bigotry inherent to Comicsgate. I'll cover that phenomenon soon, but for now, I suggest looking at his timeline and his decreasing prominence of the work that he was hired to do. So do I think that he began to get less work because of SJW forced diversity or whatever? Nope. In the cases of many, such as Ethan Van Sciver. So I see somebody saying he reminds me of someone. If you're talking about like Ethan Van Sciver or something, actually Ethan would almost more be... Okay, so here's the deal. And I didn't fully understand this until maybe a year ago. And I'm someone who has looked a lot into Comicsgate. But Comicsgate ideas existed prior to Comicsgate. And they were, the torchbearer was Chuck Dixon. You can find interviews of him in 2014, if I looked maybe further back, where he's basically saying the exact same stuff that Comicsgate, which didn't really officially exist for a few years after that, that they say. And the only difference was that he was kind of an older guy and he's saying them in old white guy ways. Like the same way that your uncle would say shit at Thanksgiving or something. Whereas once kind of Richard Meyer and Ethan got involved in stuff, they became ironic. There was memes, there were edgy jokes and stuff instead of, and that's the thing about Comicsgate generally, right? Is they managed to convince a bunch of young people that this is like the punk rock of the comic book fandom, when it's really just a bunch of old guy yelling at cloud shit, couched in edgy memes. And it's kind of funny.
Well, yeah, and I think part of it is progenitor. I think with him in particular, right? Like, I wonder. I'm not going to try and like read his mind or say what he was thinking, but I wonder if there wasn't this something is making me fail, right? And you just start grasping at straws, right? Because it can't be me. It can't be that I am doing things to harm my own career. It has to be these external things. It has to be that, manga is doing well and the wokes are infiltrating and yet da.
So the I actually in that video did go on to speculate exactly that.
Oh, there we go.
Because I think it's just, it seems obvious to me. Maybe I shouldn't speculate so much on that stuff, but like with Ethan in particular, he likes to say, he's got his claims that he makes. Like, let's see. Oh damn it, I don't have it loaded up, but give me a second.
Sure.
Yeah, all right, got it. This is Ethan's thing.
I was viciously canceled for voting for Trump.
You sure about that? You sure about that? That's why?
He likes to make that claim. I voted for Trump. It's like, no, people voted for Trump and didn't get fired for it. That's not why.
Nobody cares.
There's a very documented, obvious timeline of him just saying increasingly egregious, bigoted, hateful, fucking antisocial, generally shit on social media, and then getting called out for it, and then backtracking and apologizing, and I'm going to do better. I have a problem. I'm going to stop, using social media, blah, blah, blah. And then he just does it again, but like worse, and it just
there are people who would pay him to say it, and then that's his job now.
Yeah, and at a certain point, you're a representative of a corporation that is trying to make money,
right?
And especially in a shifting industry where they have to kind of adapt, to try to in this industry that, let's be honest, has always been close to at risk at best.
Yeah.
Because of the changing, reading habits, and then, format, distribution, and just like, moral panics and everything. So yeah, it'd be like me working at Taco Bell. And then as a representative of Taco Bell, just continuing to, be a bigot to people publicly or something like that. And then getting mad when Taco Bell fires me and be like, it's because of who I voted for.
Right.
So yeah, with Chuck Dixon, I don't really see much of that. I'm sure he did. I think there is some stuff somewhere that was just kind of like yikesy, but I don't think that's what I believe probably happened. Is this being a comic book creator, professional creator, is a competitive thing.
Oh, for sure.
You have to continue to get better, even if once you've hit you become a star, right? Like a perfect example in my mind, working today is why can't I think of his name? Shit. Adam Kubert. Am I thinking, is that the right? Yeah. Who has gotten better at his work. I used to not like his stuff in the 90s very much, and now I love his shit.
Well, I think Chuck Dixon is going to come up in the thing you were showing me on chat yesterday. So I think he is wrapped up in that work.
Oh yeah, I know. He wrote that.
Oh, okay.
That's why I brought it up. Yeah.
All right. Well,
yeah, he literally is the writer of that, and we're gonna get there. That's how I know he's queued up.
Right.
So Chuck Dixon, I don't know that he said a whole bunch that really got him fired. I think it was more like he just kind of stopped getting as much work, because if you don't get better at your craft when it's competitive as fuck, man. It just is.
Right.
You either get to where you're Jim Lee and you just, make yourself a legend right out of the gate, and then, and then maybe become, editor. What is his title at DC? I forget.
Editor-in-chief, or no, is he something else now? He might be something else now.
But I mean, basically got to where he was so well known that he had a job security. He had job security for life.
Right. That guy. He's set.
But Chuck Dixon didn't get to that point. He did a lot of comics, a lot of Batman, some Punisher and whatnot, like I said. But he was generally he's not a superstar.
No.
And so he should have kept refining his work and getting better at telling stories. And I don't know, maybe his stuff was underappreciated or something like that, but you had new creators coming in the turn of the century, turn of the millennium, really. It had a lot of change going on with like how they brought in, Grant Morrison on X-Men, and just it seemed like he just wasn't called as much, kind of like increasingly didn't get work and felt entitled.
Yeah.
Again, this is speculation, based on what I've seen happen over and over again, but like. And then also they started slowly bringing in people of color and queer creators. Of course, a lot of that's in the last half decade.
I was going to say last 5-6 years.
Yeah, and I've heard he's not very personable as well. Like he's kind of a dick, right?
Well, and I think that people sort of sleep on that in general in the workspace. Like if I work in IT. And you think of the average IT person as someone who's probably at best socially maladapted. Half of my job is talking to people, and that's not uncommon in IT. Every job requires social skills because you have to communicate on some level.
Yep. And so that's generally. Do you want me to? Should I find the article the one that I found that's like 2014?
Sure.
It might be beneficial if you want to kind of riff for a minute while I find that.
I'll chat with chat for a minute. I'll see how they're doing. I've ignored them. I have shunned them. Hush is a very good story.
It is. That was yeah.
That was the start of my favorite take on Riddler, where he knows who Batman is but can't tell anyone, and that sort of leads him in a different direction to be like a PI. Yeah, there's certainly the Sky Queen, the theory that Marvel didn't want to run past 12. That they definitely cancel at 12 a lot, and I think that's 2 graphic novels worth typically. So, yeah, you're not going to see Sketchy. You are right. You're not going to see Chuds talk about any shoujo works. I actually picked up a shoujo themed tabletop role playing game earlier this week called Girl by Moonlight. As far as run past 12, well, the one that sticks to my mind is Captain Britain and MI-13 was canceled at 12, kind of like with a rushed hurry up. That's the one that sticks out in my head. And I really enjoyed that comic because British superheroes fighting old gods and Dracula. Oh, plus Blade. I mean, the idea is it's a Sailor Moon ripoff. That's the idea. Is you're playing that sort of story with your friends. But it has different modes, like inspired by Madoka and by like some like cyberpunk stuff, and it's got a mech one, sort of inspired by Escaflowne and Evangelion, and I mean those are robots, and therefore Morgan sees a robot thing and buys the robot thing. Yeah, we're gonna get into the popularity of shoujo in a little bit, and shoujo is definitely very woke and also incredibly gay. Oh lordy, it's gay. So I see Nope mentioning Cardcaptor Sakura. When that was brought over to America, it was changed to Cardcaptors and reanimated to feature a secondary male character more, because otherwise it is mostly about the lady, and they didn't like that. So yeah, Sailor Moon, very gay. Lots of them are. Madoka is very gay. Madoka is not my biggest show that I like. It's fine. I know people who like it more than I do. It's a smidgen bleak for me. Sometimes I need some optimism in my life. And I've watched Victory Gundam for any of you who understand that reference. So yeah.
So far, I'm thinking that I'm going to maybe need to, not while streaming, but to further educate myself at least. He's got a website that he's been kind of blogging on for quite a while. So that's probably where a lot of stuff is said, and I could probably fill out a timeline a lot better with that.
Sure. Something we can come back to at a later date.
Well, but I found,
okay,
definitely found the one that I was thinking of, but I also found one in 2012 where he kind of started. So let me just read an exchange here, and you can kind of see it start to peek out at least. So this is 2012. Cast your mind back to what was going on politically.
So the Obama re-election.
Mm-hmm. And so apparently at that point, Rush Limbaugh had, talked about some Democrat that had mentioned Bane as in the character, and then Bain Capital, which was I guess Mitt Romney's vulture capitalist fucking corp, right?
Right.
And some that became a point of talking point for some fucking reason, because Bane sound like Bane. I don't know.
Oh my god, they're not even spelled the same.
No, but nonetheless, so he goes. The interviewer says, "I'm assuming you've heard that Rush Limbaugh has found a connection between Bain and Bain Capital. What's your take on that controversy?" And then immediately, these first words are hilarious to me. To be fair to Rush, the connection was first drawn by some Democrat Party operatives at the reelectobama.org.
Oh boy.
Rush picked up on an article from the Washington Examiner. That's the same article I reacted to at DixonVerse.net. And the Washington Times picked it up. It's like, okay, so it's just that little bit right there. There's no reason to be fair to Rush fucking Limbaugh.
To be fair to Rush Limbaugh. Nope. Stop. Walk it back.
Has he ever been fair to anybody except the people, no, of course not.
You know what? I want to congratulate Rush Limbaugh because he has been smoke free for a while now.
He's also had no really bad takes that I've heard of. Good for him.
Good for him. Rush
I
Limbaugh.
think I think he's also been clean from the opioids as well. But
yeah, totally kicked that opioid habit. Just really turned his life all the way around.
Good job, dude. Good job. So we're
laughing at
assholes.
my own joke. I'm so sorry, people.
We are assholes.
That's why they're here.
So anyway, he started saying stuff about like, you know, diversity and stuff that sounds more like what this you know, fucking bigotry. So we'll call it what it is. Bigotry was
what it is.
In the 90s and stuff, early 2000s, where people would complain about, you know, what you call it?
Political correctness.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the employment thing. Why is it slipping my mind right now?
Gods.
I don't know why that phrase is just completely lost in my mind right now. But
oh gods. Shit. There's a Supreme Court lawsuit about it right now. Affirmative
action. Thank you. And which is what someone pointed out whenever we were talking about this stuff. That basically someone in chat had pointed out, and it was a great observation. I think it was McLeod that said this. That it's a lot of the stuff that is said about you know, forced diversity and stuff like that is kind of just the same exact language. As for how they talk about affirmative action.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know,
exactly
we don't want
that.
You know, I'm not against black people or whatever writing comics. I just want the best writer for the job. I want the best actor for the role. And that's exactly what they would say about you shit. It's like, why are you presuming that it can't be this black person or whatever that is the best person for the role? Like, why is that? You know,
because they want to be racist, Dane.
Right. Well, they don't see it as racist.
No, I know.
Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of how it all began there. And then do we want to go into the queue of it all now?
We should get into the queue of it all.
Let me set this up, because since we started this podcast, we have known that we are facing down the barrel of a very long gun. You know, and well, let's use a different metaphor. We're on a train track in a tunnel, and at the end of that, there's a light, but that light is not good. It is not heaven. It is QAnon coming right at us, and that is a fucking path that we have chosen to take because it is right up the alley of this podcast's premise, and it really is the culmination of so much of this shit. Like, there's just so much of the stuff that we'll talk about before we even get to QAnon properly that is wrapped up in there. It's almost like it's you know, like somebody made a bathtub of you know, you ever have been to a party where somebody would take a tub and like put all the liquor in there and shit like that?
Yeah.
It's basically like that. That's QAnon. And all of the different liquors and fruits and stuff are the various little topics.
Yeah.
So here we go.
It's the
and this
final
is just
boss.
touching on it. Okay. We're just, I wanted to preface and let you know, we will be getting way more into this in the future.
But
honestly, I kind of want to see if the thing has played itself out, and I don't think it really has. Sadly,
I don't think so either. We'll see, but I'm not optimistic.
So in 2019, and this is what I found when I was looking for the Chuck Dixon thing, or looking for the Manga versus Comics, and I found Chuck Dixon, and I was like, "What's he been up to?" Oh no. Because he has been working on, or he's done 2 issues of it. Alt Hero Q, Where We Go 1 is this first arc of it. And some surprising things that I'm going to say about this. First is that Arkhaven Comics, which is a publisher. How many of you know who? Whenever I say the name Vox Day, who that is?
I know who that is, but I wish I didn't.
Vox Day. Who knows about Vox Day? We can look up a little bit about Vox Day. So Vox Day is the owner of this publication company, right? Arkhaven. Okay, so he's a publisher. What? That's cool. People like comics. Good, right? No. Let's see. Going to go right to the God source of information here. Wikipedia.
Yep.
Vox Day. Theodore Robert Beale. Is
all right.
American...
With a name like Beale, I would want to change my name to a thinly veiled Crusade reference.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, it's Vox Dei, which is the voice of God.
Oh, I see. Is an American far-right activist, writer, publisher, and video game designer. He has been described as a white supremacist, a misogynist, and part of the alt-right. The Wall Street Journal described him as the most despised man in science fiction. And when you look him up, it's kind of like it just feeds this same pattern of either a lot of these guys that become creators with specifically right-wing content, or implicitly, like Eric July, they're either failed or former pros, and that's it. Like they're failed or they're formers, right? So like
Right.
Chuck Dixon, former. Technically, I guess you could say failed, but former. He was successful in the industry. Then there's Ethan, was successful in the industry. There's a few guys like that. Then the other type are the Eric Julys, who has talked about many times how he always wanted to work in the industry. And if you read ISOM, you kind of see why maybe he wasn't able to hack it, because it's just there's no talent for writing there. But yeah, so when you look up this guy on Google, you'll find that he has been nominated for I think it's like the Eisner Award, Saturn Award, or something many times, and just never wins it. And it's the kind of person that just feels entitled to that win, and feels entitled to be part of the industry, even though they fucked their career up, like Ethan, right? It's like you listen to Ethan talk, and he both hates the industry and then also complains that he was fired from it, right?
Right.
It's like I'm doing so much better now, but I was fired. And it's like, pick one, man. Which one?
Do you know what he is?
What?
He's the guy who leaves a like is broken up with, and cannot decide if he broke up with them or they broke up with him. Because the way Ethan tells it goes back and forth, right? Like sometimes he was fired from DC.
In the moment, right?
Right.
And I'm Sky Queen. I'm not sure. Oh, not that one. What are you talking about? Like, we all know the person who did I Am Not Starfire did well. I Am Not Starfire, pretty sure that did really well. Like I hate to have to derail for that, but it seems like you got some weird. Sound like you're watching some specific content, honestly.
Broaden your horizons.
Yeah. Would you mind just real quick looking up I Am Not Starfire and seeing how well that did?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
And I'll continue this. So yeah, this is who he is. He's a right winger, far right winger. Like, so there's a lot of guys that I talk about, like, that if I call them a white nationalist or white supremacist, they would get offended. Even though you can see the things they've said, and they're like, no, I'm not. That's, they're like, oh, I'm not that, blah, blah, blah. I love black people. I think this guy would just be like, yep. That's how far right he is. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I Am Not Starfire was one of those things that was latched onto when it was not made for the people who talked about it.
It's a young adult novel.
Literally not made for those people, and they're acting like it's the death of comics, because it's a grift, just like all this is about. Nonetheless, so that's him. That is who yeah.
Well, and the writer is I believe queer and Japanese.
Okay.
Something that people in today's episode would deny exists, that there are no queer people in Japan or of Japanese descent. Despite see that previous conversation about Sailor Moon for more details.
So this is interesting. So in September 2018, Beale announced Comicsgate Comics was going to be his publishing brand, as 100% SJW free. The use of the name drew backlash from Ethan Van Sciver and other Comicsgate activists, who variously objected to being associated with white supremacists or the name being commercialized. Yeah.
Oh, sweet summer child, Ethan.
He runs YouTube channels, which, according to the Daily Dot, have jointly more than 49,500 subscribers. Wow. Congratulations, I guess, to those
So-
fucking Nazis.
You know what? I'm gonna give a shout out to EVS here. Like, way to tell a farther right person than you are. I really
Hey,
appreciate
let's not give our. I mean, shout out to him anyway, because the podcast wouldn't exist without
Would
him. so
exist
thank you.
without him.
But on this specific regard, I doubt his.
Oh, he didn't have good
motivation
intentions,
for-
but
You know, like it's I think that he was just more like, either you're going to take money from me and my
Right.
ability to use Comicsgate, and I'm the one that I knocked Richard Meyer off this shithill so I can claim it for myself. You can't have it, you know,
This is
and also
my
maybe
manure
like
club.
you're going to give the game away about what we're really about by just being such an open Nazi, you know. So
Yeah,
I did want to find.
I know about him from the Sad Puppies thing.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
No, seems like
So
a lot.
He and a bunch of right-wing weirdos tried to hack the Hugo Awards to nominate a right-wing novel.
Yeah. Yep. Block voting by special interest groups.
He's just a
so
no talent.
Just real quick here, political views. He describes himself as a Christian nationalist, which, look, credit to him for being open about it, because there's a lot of
Right.
these guys that won't be.
They will talk around it.
You know, as we challenged bounding into comics, just like, guys, just put at the like on your website. It's not even in their description that's what they are, but that's
Wait.
what they are.
Hold the
Right.
fuck up.
What?
Hold the motherfucker up. He lives in Switzerland and owns a manor in Switzerland.
Yeah, why?
Get the fuck out. Like, I'm just.
Oh, if you think that is not the most offensive thing about him, I think the most offensive thing that I've found just briefly was.
Oh no, there are more offensive things, but if he wants to live in Switzerland, he can go away forever and not bother anyone.
So
if
you know,
have live in a Swiss manor money, just retire and enjoy life.
do you
Go ahead.
do you know who the name Anders Breivik? Whenever I say that, who that is?
No, I don't know who that is.
You guys remember the Christchurch massacre?
Yes.
Christchurch, New Zealand. I think there
Yep.
was something like 50 people murdered.
Killed. Yep.
54 or something like that, by just a proud, open white nationalist. He actually listed quite a few very popular right-wing, creators as like inspirations. Well,
and they all did that. No, me? How could I inspire that?
Right. I can't believe that these guys keep killing people and then saying we're inspirations. That's crazy.
Yeah. Wonder why that happened. Why that happened.
Well, Vox Day has called him a hero and a savior. So that tells you that's Vox Day, all right? That is who he is. That's what he's about. He's a fucking piece of shit. There's not many people that I would say, you know what? I think the world would be better off if you just kind of stopped breathing. It's not many people I would say that. And in fact, yesterday I was getting some emails from someone who has a problem with whenever I've said something like that.
Grow up.
I'm sorry.
They can grow up. Yeah.
Until my words have the power to make that happen, it's not really something to get worried about.
No.
And if they do get that power to make that happen, fucking Christ, Lord help us all. Anyway, so that's who his comic book is with. And so it's called Alt Hero Q, right? So apparently that is the name of the comic series that the guy does in general, is just Alt Hero, and it'll have a character name or whatever.
Sure.
And it's specifically about Q. Now, maybe it's not QAnon, though, right? Maybe it's not. Okay.
Maybe it's about the semi-deity in Star Trek.
True. Yeah, true. I mean, this would kind of be a weird cover, but okay.
Yeah, sure.
A couple things I'll say about this before I talk much about it. It was, this is fucked up to say, okay. It was kind of an enjoyable 2 issues to read.
Really?
And just like if it was divorced from the shit that it increasingly becomes clear it's leading to, I would be like, that's fine. That's a fine, like Chuck Dixon was never a bad writer. He knows how to craft a story, a narrative, and stuff like that. Now, on the other hand, it's written like a guy who is writing 80s action tropes nonstop. And so in that way, it's pretty cringe and kind of fun, but stupid. Like, if it wasn't for all the political and culty connotations involved, I would just be like, that's fucking, it's like, you ever watch an Expendables movie? It's kind of like that. And in fact, I think he actually does write an Expendables comic book.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So, just stuff like here, and the art's okay. It's fine.
It's fine.
Look, Comicsgate, they've put out some garbage. There's a lot of really bad comics.
There are.
This is serviceable stuff. All right.
Yeah.
So like here, he's like, "Oh, can you put extra onions on the double cheese?" And she's like, "Extra onions? You're not planning on staying overnight?" Like, oh, clever. Like one of the first things you see the hero do is make a, they're talking about like, you're gonna fart in bed,
right?
Or what? And just.
I don't know what's going on by wow, that got.
It's and it's about, so this guy is and here's the most troubling thing. All right, I need you guys to console me here because I'm really upset about it, and I'm legit mean that. Other than the Q stuff that is in here, and it kind of creeps up on you. The character's name is really upsetting.
What is the name?
The character's name is Roland Dane.
I'm so sorry.
I know. I fucking Christ, man. Like, why did you do this to me?
He knows. He knows about you, and he wants you to suffer.
Prior to this, I was in such good company. Lorna.
Yeah.
Dane DeHaan. He, didn't really take off as much as I think people expected, but he's a pretty good actor. And of course you have to deal with every once in a while your Dane Cook. But he'd pretty much been tossed aside.
Yeah. Just kind of a harmless idiot.
But the good news is there's 2 issues out of this. The second issue came out in 2019. And then I think something happened in 2020 that may have kind of like killed the motivation to put this comic out anymore.
Yeah.
Because,
I'm reading it, and there's a reference to a secretary and protection duty. So I'm presuming that's a political official, the secretary.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a regime change despite the efforts of certain single letter organizations.
Yep, which is exactly what this is about. So you might be wondering, okay, actually, we probably need to get into this. Does everybody know what QAnon believes generally? Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I do.
Just as a quick rundown here, I'm going to upload my QAnon video that I did to my Patreon because YouTube won't let me host it.
Because they don't like Q content for.
Well, I mean, the thing was, it was one of my 2 depression era videos that I call them, where I was like greatly depressed in 2020 and I couldn't do any content that I was regularly doing. The best I could do over the course of weeks was compile together a kind of propaganda video based on other people's content.
Sure.
And so one of them was, this is what QAnon is. And so it's full of clips of actual QAnon content and people saying what it is. So like, I understand they don't want that on there because
no, I get it.
It's also interspersed with like, David Pakman and Tom Hartman talking about what it actually is and why it's terrible, but still. And then the other one was like about Portland being under siege by federal agents and shit. And that was full of citizen journalist clips that gets kind of rough in there with
yeah.
So I kind of get it. I'm just glad that I downloaded them before YouTube just fucking deleted them without my knowledge.
They will do that.
I'll put those on Patreon if anyone wants to see that stuff. But QAnon generally is very intentional. Not quite clear whose intent, but clear what side of the political spectrum they're on. Misinformation campaign, disinformation campaign, full of conspiracy and just insane shit that if you start looking into the claims, you're going to be like, how does anybody believe this and stuff like that? But generally at its core, QAnon is the modern version of what was called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
Yuppers.
That's where we get kind of and then it starts to make sense that Vox Day would want to make a comic book about it, because if you're not familiar with the protocols, what those were about, they were also it was a piece of propaganda, misinformation, fiction. It's kind of not known for sure whether it was done as like a joke or what the purpose was.
I think the consensus historically is that it was published by the Tsarist government in Russia to frame the Jews of trying to overthrow the Tsar so they could do more pogroms.
Pretty much. And then, then it was used, not too long after that, it became the favorite works of some people that, yeah, I'd say maybe problematic, like Adolf Hitler. That was basically his
Hitty Cent.
Yeah, old Hitty Cent makes an appearance on the pod. Woo! Hitty Cent.
Henry Ford is also a fan of the protocols.
Yeah, Henry Ford probably is when you really think about it, he's probably a big reason why there's so much fucking anti-Semitism in the U.S. because he was just like carrying pamphlets around, handing them out here, and this is a craven capitalist Ford was. So the fact that he was willing to just give this shit out is telling you how much he believed in it.
Right. And then quietly stopped at some point. Just
so when people say that Henry
innocently.
Ford was a Nazi or something like that, then this is what they're talking about.
Yeah.
It definitely inspired the Nazi everything. Like what happened with the Holocaust was directly inspired by the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which again is fucking utter fiction about how the Jews have some kind of satanic ritual where it's blood libel is what they called it, where like you drink the blood of children or whatever to gain immortality, and it's just like insane shit, satanic panic thrown at the Jews specifically. Okay, so then you fast forward to nowadays, QAnon. What is that about? At its core, they believe that all of their political enemies, anybody that disagrees with them, is part of a global cabal, which is a word that applies to what the protocols were about. And they don't say Jews generally. I mean, you get deeper into it, and you're definitely going to find the ones like Vox who do believe that.
Yeah, you go deep enough into Q, and someone is asking the JQ.
So yeah, exactly. The JQ it's always there, and it's just someone at some point decided, what if we take every conspiracy theory that ever happened, and throw it all in the mix, and just say, hey, all of whatever. It's kind of choose your own adventure, right?
It absolutely is, and that's how a lot of people who follow Comicsgate get into Q, is because you'll get Comicsgaters and guys that you guys talk about on the initiative and chuckle fucks like Jordan Krabbyson or whatever, Lobsterson, talking about cultural Marxism. Well, if you don't know, cultural Marxism is a modern rehash of cultural Bolshevism, which was the conspiracy theory in, among other places, Nazi Germany, that the Jews were using communism to take over places.
Yeah, so it gets pretty icy, and also it's pretty upsetting whenever you realize that this whole groomer panic is kind of just, and that's the insidious thing about this, is that the vast majority of people who are repeating shit like this have no idea, unfortunately, and I'm not saying that they're innocent, but they have no idea that what they're saying is directly inspired by QAnon, anti-Semitism, this conspiracy thing. Because in 2020, the reason I made a video about it was, like I said earlier, there was a good thing that happened, which was, wow, a lot of people were buying comics. The bad thing was a lot of people were home, middle-aged wine moms and shit, and they're trying to understand what's going on with the country. Why is everything so fucked? Everything's scary. You know what I mean?
Right.
And when you don't have a class analysis that allows you to kind of understand a little bit more about why things suck, you're going to look for who's to blame, right? Why is it like this? And you start looking around on Facebook is where it really became a problem. Probably still is. I don't know. I don't go into that shithole. But there was a big push of Q content, and you had the Save the Children campaign, which, look, anybody that would say, I don't want to save the children, you're kind of a piece of shit. But so there was prior to 2020, there was a Save the Children campaign that had to do with sex trafficking or trafficking in general of children. And that's a good thing. They were doing good work. They've been doing it for a while. They didn't get a lot of press, but then suddenly QAnon attached itself to that hashtag. And they're like, save the children, because QAnon, when they say it, they mean the Democrats and Hillary Clinton and everybody that we don't like politically, anybody that disagrees with us, they're taking children into these underground places and they're drinking their adrenochrome to stay
Oh,
young.
it's crazier than that because you're forgetting a step in that process. The Democrats are taking them into a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C.'s basement in a building that has no basement because Washington, D.C. is built on a fucking swamp.
I think that you're kind of right there, but what I found looking into it is that Pizzagate came first, before the official Q. I think that whoever began Q, because there's kind of debate about whether it was the same person that continued it,
right?
But like, whoever began it looked at Pizzagate and said, "Okay, that almost worked."
Yep.
We had one guy that was willing to go, and to investigate like against all reason. Like you were saying, there's no fucking basement. It's a fucking pizza place. What are you doing going with a gun to that place? But what if we could motivate people in a larger scale to make them think that this is like not just one example, not just a pizza place, but like an ongoing globalist fucking thing. And that's how it kind of envelops all these different, already existing views of globalism and blah, blah, blah. So, Hey, the stranger. Hey, the stranger. That's when you like put a tennis ball under your armpit, I think.
Uh-huh. Are you a danger? Are you the stranger danger?
No, nobody else heard of that before.
No, sorry.
Exactly, Greg. That's the thing. Hunter S. Thompson made that up. Adrenochrome is not a real thing. And they believe it's real. And then you got people like Jim Caviezel, who is QAnon. And they actually think that he's basically Jesus. It's like he's the guy that played Jesus. So they're like, oh, Jesus believes it too. It's insane. These people are not well. And I don't mean insane like to be dismissive, but kind of. But also they need fucking help. It is
they are
a mental health dilemma.
They are mentally unwell. And the first victims of Q of this conspiracy theory are its adherents. And they have gone on to
see. We got no care to correct that misinformation. It's not adrenochrome. It's Catboy Bussy. Okay. Get you some nice pussy and stay young forever.
So speaking of Catboy Bussy, we should probably get back to manga and comics.
Okay, but I did want to get to a couple things just to prove my point about because I read these comics. Okay.
Yeah.
I read them. I don't want it to be for nothing.
Okay. Hit it. I will let you go out,
it's a good example. It actually is a really good example in an accidental sense on his part, I think, of how this plays out. So this starts off. It's just about a special agent or whatever who's protecting diplomats. He gets attacked. There's stuff going on he doesn't understand. He's on the run. These guys, they get killed. And so then I jump to the end of the issue where he's on the run. Had to get clothes off the street. He's, they're looking for him. Then he starts getting texts, and he's like, who is this? And he's like, no need to text. This program responds to voice. So already this thing is like, holy shit. You're powerful, right? You are in danger. There's no one you can trust. Let me guess. You're my only friend. Think logically. What was he thinking before? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
This is the enemy of the American people. Patriots protect patriots. You know my name. What's yours? Q. And then I was like, because I started it reading knowing that it's going to have something to do with QAnon, but I didn't know exactly how on the nose it was going to be. It is on the fucking nose because issue 2 starts off and this is fucking great. So he finds this guy, there's this whole network of underground people and stuff. You work for Q? I wouldn't call it work. I'm part of what you might call a network. Volunteers only.
Wait, how many? Does he look like Stan Lee? Is that just me, or did he draw that guy look like fucking Stan Lee?
I didn't want to see that, but you said it. No,
I'm so sorry. I'm so mad.
So he says, "How many of you are there? You'd be surprised. Feel free to take a nap." And then he takes a nap. He wakes up, and this is fucking amazing. This moment. We getting ready to land? No, it's time for you to jump. Jump out of the plane, you're nuts. And he gets a text, make the jump. I'm out of here, bye.
Wow.
Like just 2 seconds ago, he's like, that's crazy. Q says, hey, jump. Okay.
Wow.
It really sells exactly what the shit is like. It fucking overtakes someone's brain to where you're trusting the word of some fucking thing on a screen like you have no idea.
Right. You are trusting the words, like sketchy words on your phone that you don't know where they came from. And nothing could be more like emblematic of what the fuck QAnon is.
Yeah, that's why I think this page is fucking great. Great job, Chuck Dixon. You fucking nailed it. Like, except the problem is it's not doing this with special agents and badasses. It's doing it with fucking a lot of mentally unwell people, and then actually some people who have fucking military training and shit, and that's not good. But it just gets Q-ier and Q-ier from there. So these are only pages that have to do with that. But
right.
So here, are you Q? We're all Q, brother. Even you now. And he's like, who calls the shots? Depends on the mission. I only need to know. It's like, it's the mystery of it is what people are drawn to, I think.
Right.
They like having this feeling of being involved in a mystery and something that matters. But like, dude, you don't know anything about any of the information you're fucking getting. You're just trusting random people because they're telling you stuff that lights up your fucking, whatever part of the brain.
Well, I think it plays on this idea that like and it's, the whole cult system really depends on making you feel special and smart while also isolating you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
That's how many of them are there? Not enough to win an election.
True.
I mean, if you believe I don't know.
Yeah, unless you believe Q, in which case then they won and they were cheated.
Well, what's funny is that like when the election happened, pretty soon after that, I don't remember exactly how soon, but like Q just went silent.
Yep.
And then I guess more recently has been making posts again, but it's unclear. It's always been unclear if it's the same person. Even I listen to a podcast. It's actually one of the inspirations of this podcast, QAnon Anonymous, and they track all this stuff obviously, and they talked about on one episode when Q returned, quote unquote, and that the language was sometimes a little bit different in the way that Q used to talk versus now and stuff, and it's like highlights this so much. That like, dude, you're just anyway. So then it goes on to talk about that now there's a let's see. Oh wait. So they're trying to get to this this actor. So he's got to go to Hollywood. Can you believe that? Got to go to Hollywood. There's something going on in Hollywood with the most famous actor.
Of course there is. Because Hollywood is run by the
and
by that I mean rich conservatives.
I'm just I know this isn't really what the episode's about. I'm sorry, but I read this shit, so I'm just trying to show you.
Yeah, well, I think it's tangentially related because the person who sort of kicked off this manga versus comics mental gymnastics exercise is responsible for this.
I'm not sure. What? Okay. Dylan, I don't know what you're talking about, man. Like, are you on the wrong stream? So
sure.
Here he's talking about, or here, understand you'll never be whole again. You're a casualty in a secret war, a dead man walking. We're working to expose the global establishment.
Well, there it is.
Little stuff there, and he's giving them new identity and whatnot. It's you against the world. That's one of the appeals to these people, I think. It's like, I'm the oppressed one. I'm the one that the world is trying to, do something sinister to, and I'm the hero for fighting back. And, it's basically a way to program people to be against progress and against other human beings' rights and against, reason, because they can't win anymore. The right can't on the ideas. They talked about the culture war. Generally, it's pretty much was lost in any natural sense of the, and there's been this inorganic push back by a lot of content that is, deceptive, flat out lies, and, so on and so forth. Q being a very good example of such. And then he goes to Hollywood and he's like, I'm here thanks to guidance from my new best friend. This is a Secret Service type agent who is just like, okay, yeah, he's been, betrayed by his government and whatnot, but that happens in movies all the time.
Right.
And he's like, this is my new best friend. I'm going to do everything he says. Right.
Guess so.
And he breaks into the most famous action star, Rip Braddock's house, and he's on the internet there. I wonder what he's looking at. You know?
Gross.
And he's like, just show me. He's like, you'll never unsee it. Just show me. And then, yeah, I didn't, it doesn't show anything, but it gives you the idea of, you get the idea. This is where it was always going. And I wished it wasn't, but I was like, maybe it's just cue and reference passing or something like that. No, it is directly about that. And fortunately, it seems like we might never know how that story wraps up.
I live in hope. So yeah, that is the ass munch who came up with what we're talking about today. So just to give you context, some actual context on actual fandom, that's the sort of person pushing this Orientalist narrative about manga and comics.
I mean, it seems to be the genesis of like why would you even frame it that way, right? But yeah.
Yeah, it's so now I think it's important that we take that narrative apart. We've talked about what it is, we've talked about who started it, but I think we need to take it apart, right? Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So if we haven't proved that this is Orientalist by now, I think I've done something wrong here, but we'll go over it again. That when it comes to comics, there's a wide array of comics across the planet, and those aren't neatly divided into East and West boxes. We've talked about how they trade ideas back and forth, how they inspire each other,
and how they're based on kind of like nebulous premises in the first place.
Right. And how
like
it's a medium, not a genre. Comics aren't a genre, comics are a medium. And manga, as a type of comics, also a medium. So the next sort of misconception I want to talk about is this idea you will get with these people when you start to talk to them, who are saying that manga is superior to comics, which is a fine take. But if you question some of them, they will talk about the Japanese culture. And what the hell does that mean? So you kind of got to dig into what they think it means. So
for one thing, I would say that I think it kind of relates to how they say that everything's political now or whatever, when a lot of what they mean is that they didn't have a political awareness until the last few years, and now they see everything as political. And in the same kind of way, they don't have context for Japanese politics.
Exactly.
And social issues, so they don't see it that way.
Right. Yeah. They grossly oversimplify Japan's internal politics and Japan's relationship with the world. There's a stereotype about Japan that it is insular and xenophobic. And there is, like a lot of stereotypes, some amount of truth to that. But Japan is, at the end of the day, one of the major players in the global economy. And their media, whether it's anime or manga or, video games, 2 of the 3 major video game console creators and publishers out of Japan, right? Japan is involved in the whole world. They are sending their thoughts and their culture and their ideas across the planet. But also, they take in a lot of ideas. Their business culture often requires people to learn other languages, so they will hire language teachers from around the planet to teach English and Chinese and German and Spanish, because that's important in the business world, and so it's valued in their education system. Also, their culture this thing happened called World War II. And we kind of broke Japan.
Yeah.
And whether or not they deserved it is something that can be and should be debated and doesn't really matter for today's conversation.
I don't think that the vast majority of people who died deserved to die.
No, I don't either. I think there's, doing assholes things, and
we dropped some fucking nukes on civilization that had nothing to do with the fucking Pearl Harbor attacks or anything, and
right.
Fucked a lot of people up. That's not good.
And the fire bombings in Tokyo, and we destroyed their civilization.
Yeah.
And their post-war culture was rebuilt by Americans. They were an occupied country for years. And their politicians were basically handpicked by the American military well into the Cold War.
True.
Well into, for decades. And that's sort of where their political conservatism got its roots after World War II, is because the American military put them there, despite Japan having a rich history of socialist movements, including some that ended up fleeing to Cuba. Yeah, Cajun guy is talking about some of the in-depth stuff.
Yeah. It's big yikes, man. Big yikes on the US.
Big yikes.
We just like our fucking, the US has this almost like a toxic masculine kind of vibe to it generally. Like, oh, dude, they punched me, whatever. Like, I got to show them. It's like, it's okay. We're talking to him, but I don't like the guy that's talking to him though.
Right. Well, yeah, because people think about the Cold War starting in the 50s. The Cold War starts in about 1944. It was just we were still allies at the time.
Yep.
So, but because this stereotype exists, and because we have, famous conservative Japanese politicians, there's this narrative that Japan is this like culturally pure racist utopia.
Pause real quick. I'm sorry, just because I know you're new. LOL 3000. They're as long as they need to be generally, unless one of us needs to go. But I mean, I think we're probably not going to be too much longer here. But also, you can watch it back if you need to come back and watch the end of it or something. It'll be here. Yeah. And if not, then otherwise you can subscribe to Forced Adversity, the channel. It's a different channel from this that has past uploads going up on there. So
check out the Transformers one that was just uploaded. I'm really proud of that.
Good shit.
And I'm proud of your drops in it. Like, just the stuff with the Alex Jones thing killed me at the kitchen table.
Oh, well, I mean, I actually have that one drop. I exported it just to single it out. If you want to
hit it.
Well, if I would have had it loaded up already,
okay. Well, I'll keep talking. You can pull it up later. All right. So, but that creates this illusion of this pure culture, and sort of goes into the next thing we like to talk about, which is that Japan is uncorrupted. So when we talk about Orientalism, there is this layer of that the cultures in the East, air quotes, are less civilized. And part of that is that they're not polluted by all of these, God, it hurts to say, degenerate liberal ideas. This is fucking bullshit. As we talked about earlier, there is some very gay manga out there. And there are actually two whole genres of manga, yuri and yaoi, that are specifically about lesbian and gay romances, though a lot of this is fetishized because people are weird.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's like a lot of sorry, I was trying to do a transition into this, but I'm just going to do it, okay?
Now let's talk about the Transformers agenda, aka they're putting chemicals in the energon and trying to turn our bots gay. I was so happy. So
yeah.
And as far as fetishizing, especially lesbians, that is not uncommon in most places. That's that's a thing everywhere. And even then, a lot of it is pretty positive. To go back to Sailor Moon is probably the most well-known example. There's plenty of queer representation to be found in manga, but also as far as more progressive themes, there are lots of manga that have environmentalist themes, anti-corporate themes, anti-war themes. Yeah, there's a lot of like. So you think of the people who make American. Think of George Lucas, right? The guy who made the fuzzy Viet Cong, anti-war guy. Think of a country that got nuked, and the sort of people who grew up in that environment might have a thing to say about war and it being bad and mutually destructive. And so there's a lot of progressive anti-war messages in manga and anime that these people who talk about how it's superior entirely ignore. That somehow the war is hell thing just flies over their head because of the cool robots. Because when you're an occupied country for a while, that will do that to you. But I think one thing that the chudosphere likes to glomp onto is that Japanese stories do two kind of sketchy things. One is they downplay Japanese war crimes. Oh, God's Grave of the Fireflies. Sketchy, why you gotta bring up that? Such a fucking dark movie. Such, like, Grave of the Fireflies is one of the best movies I've ever seen, and I will never watch it again. It is traumatizing. Oh, Godzilla is very political. Godzilla is an analogy for the bomb. Yeah, Godzilla is explicitly political. And even in its sillier moments is still like, there's a level of like the Japanese military, the Japanese Defense Force is a joke. And so like, oh, this thing is attacking Tokyo. The military is useless. Hopefully Godzilla saves us.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's difficult to find something that's not, just a few degrees away from being specifically political, honestly.
Right. It is. It is often not just subtext, but the text, and they will ignore it or miss it.
I mean, these are people that said that Top Gun, I don't know what you were talking about. I'm sorry, I had to go for a minute. I also realized I left my mic on, so I'm sorry if you guys heard me pee. If not, then I shouldn't have mentioned that. But nonetheless, yeah, these are guys that say that Top Gun is like the answer to all this woke political stuff. And it's like,
yeah, Top Gun isn't political.
There's specifically interviews where they talked about like they wanted Top Gun, the sequel, the new one, to be more diverse and to like, there's that stuff exists and they just ignore it. But when it comes to Star Wars, and it's like Kathleen Kennedy wore a Forces Female shirt one time that had to do with
lose their fucking mind
campaign, and then suddenly that's just like evidence of how it's insanity. And like, what's political typically has to do with what you're aware is a political issue, right?
Well, and I think on the right and on the left, we kind of have different definitions as to what is political. And I think that on the right, there is this I think conservative thought often only makes sense in that framework that like what is and isn't political. Like saying Top Gun isn't political, but Captain Marvel is like, those are kind of the same movie.
Well, I mean, better comparison would be like, for example, like, saying that Top Gun, I think that's probably accurate. Saying Top Gun isn't political because of the fact that in the movie, it's kind of a nondescript,
right,
not specific to real life, situation going on. But it's like, dude, you guys call all kinds of allegories political all the time, but like when it's not convenient because they want to have something to. The real issue with the Top Gun thing, by the way, why did they choose that movie? Because it's not Disney.
Right.
Because it's a big action movie that it was guaranteed just about to be successful, starring an actor who, you know, generally doesn't say quote unquote woke things or do woke stuff or whatever, even though he was very much for fucking, I mean, he had some pretty regimented
COVID
control over the whole COVID set lockdown stuff. He was very specific about that shit. People got fired, heads rolled. But of course, they ignore that, even though they also think that COVID lockdown and protocols are woke.
Right. So that they...
It's just inconsistent to the point of absurdity.
And I think it's only...
I get that.
I think to them it seems perfectly consistent in a lot of ways because Top Gun doesn't challenge them in a way that a 2-second gay kiss in Buzz Lightyear does, right? Like seeing MiGs fight F-14s in a movie isn't political, but because that's normal, right? And then, oh God, it's the Oprah couch jumping thing. We're not going to talk about that. We're just
maybe we should. Maybe we should.
Maybe we should. I mean,
because
we probably have to talk
adversity
about
against Oprah then, or what?
I don't know. We can talk about.
There's plenty of Scientology and Tom Cruise stuff we could actually probably do an episode about.
Yeah, I just realized that, and I hate myself for it.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel.
F-14s are apolitical. They lent some to Ukraine, so they stop being so political.
I mean, look, you can't say that Apache helicopters are apolitical because they're always talking about them as if like they want to be that as the gender, right?
Right. That's
their joke.
So here's the thing. I want to test that theory with them. If they say I identify as a attack helicopter, I want to offer them some helicopter fuel and I will feed it to them myself.
You gonna let them decide where the gas nozzle is? I don't think you call it that on a helicopter, but
I will not.
Fair enough.
Well, or you know what? If they identify ones, they can show me which hole they want it in. But it's going in a hole.
It's going one of those holes. And having just finally seen Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I've got jokes about holes in my mind.
Oh God, I have not seen that, and I kind of don't care to.
It's look, I didn't hate it. I mean, that's it. There's just, I talked about it in the server. The initiative server was trying to get people's feedback on what it was I was missing with it, and I think we nailed it down. That the thing that's missing is that they did a time jump and actor change with Cassie.
Yeah,
and it's like all of the stuff around her, and she's a major character in the movie, and it's like just you're supposed to just kind of accept a lot of the stuff that has happened as being part, and it's like it's just there's a disconnect. So some of the emotional stuff doesn't work. Scott's character arc is kind of disconnected feeling.
Yeah,
but generally it's a good movie. There's some good stuff in it and whatnot. But anyway, that's not what this episode's about.
No. So, but at the same time, there are things in Japanese media that I think that are there for the chuds to glomp onto.
Sure.
So even though like war is hell is a common thing, soldiers are often depicted as heroes, even if they're on the wrong side.
Yeah. Yeah, the moral this has more to do, doesn't have as much to do with like wokeness as like the idea, the foundational kind of traditional morals system in terms, at least in terms of narrative and how they tell stories, is different.
Right.
Like it's more like their stories are more likely to have than ours anyway, generally to have an unhappy ending, for example.
Right.
Gordy, stop it.
Yeah, a lot of Japanese stories end in tragedy.
Yeah.
At least the ones I watch or read. Boy, howdy. Anyone following Gundam Witch from Mercury, oh boy, that's heading in directions. Very, very sad directions. Yeah, so, and also, I think there is some amount of like, on the left in America, we tend to be critical of the military industrial complex and of America's war crimes. We were literally complaining or criticizing, the Americans' use of nuclear weapons in Japan to end the war, and their sort of excuse for that and what it really was about. And Japan, for instance, the prime god damn it, my brain just died. The prime minister who was shot by the assassin with the homemade gun. Fuck. Anyways, the Japanese government has a history of denying the use of sex slaves in occupied China and Korea. Something they did, and it is Shinzo Abe. Thank you, Daniel. Very much a denier of sex slavery done by the Japanese army in World War II.
Cringe.
And they like to downplay their own war crimes.
Which is probably easy to do whenever you're kind of almost like the victim of the largest one of the largest.
Right.
Like, hey, we can't be that bad. Look at what happened to us.
Yeah. Look what they did to us. And like, war is hell.
Like how if a country was, there's a certain nation state that was like, founded on very good based valid, need to give certain people that had been historically oppressed, they need their own space so they can defend. It's theirs. Nobody can fuck with them. But then like after a while, they maybe kind of get a little too yikesy with how violent they are towards, people outside their. Anyway, I'm not talking. Yeah.
So the other thing that comes up a lot in Japanese, especially like sci-fi and fantasy media, is fucking Nazis. And
just go away, Nazis. Nobody likes you.
Oh, okay. So here is the problem. And this is I'm gonna call this the stormtrooper problem. It is that you can have Nazis as the bad guy, right? And even if your intention is the Nazis are the bad guy, you need them to be in a visual story, visually appealing. And there's a certain iconic look to Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
And so they use that because when you're talking about villains that everyone, asterisk, agrees are bad guys, everyone kind of agrees, asterisk, that Nazis are bad guys.
Yep.
That asterisk being except for the Nazis.
Or apologists, which,
right.
Functionally, they're just
those are the same thing. Yeah, I'm not one to mince words on that. If you're going to, actually, about a thing a Nazi did, I have bad news for my opinion of you, and that is you're a fucking Nazi.
Samesies.
Just because...
Not fascism is a superficial thing, like just inherently. That's why they can't create ideas of their own. They have to kind of cobble together shit from other previous existing things. And they have to rewrite history to be like what they want it to be and stuff, because they can't just like create things. It is inherently destructive and a death ideology. So like it's easy to make something look superficially cool. Like, when you just take like black leather and some fucking, red trim or whatever, like whatever version of the Nazi we're talking about in fiction. Right.
Right. And anime has lots of Nazis.
And if you divorce that from the moral context, the historical context, then it's like, oh, that's cool looking. I want to be that guy.
Right. And yeah, so I have a brief list to give the audience and you an idea of the many a sample of the many flavors of Nazis in Japanese media.
Oh dear.
So we have, I wish I would have pulled pictures for these. I think some of them I'm going to have to. So we have Nazi classic, the original, the OG, original goober. They're not gangster. They're fucking punks. You have Insomnia Hitler, Eye Patch Hitler, a wide array of Nazi scientists, space Nazis, alien space Nazis,
whoa,
and Nazi Catboy.
Is that the one that like Nick Fuentes was dating? Oh, it's supposed to be fiction. Sorry.
You killed me, Dave. Fuck.
I mean, because he was, apparently. I mean, it seemed pretty obvious he was kind of shacking up with a cat boy at one point.
So I can show some pictures of various flavors of Nazi if we want to give a visual representation. I did not know Hitler was in Captain Planet, Daniel. That's hilarious.
Hitler was what?
In Captain Planet, according to Daniel. You got a source for that? I want to see that.
Well, as we're talking about, by the way, it's a good time to promote Fridays on Live AF. I am currently 2 episodes deep into my fascism series, which will go on as long as it needs to. I've got about 10 specific points that we're covering episode by episode. So far, we've done the mythic past and propaganda. This coming Friday will be anti-intellectualism, and it's not the only thing we do on Fridays. I try to do that, and then like some other stuff too. But yeah, should check that out Fridays if you haven't yet. Anyway,
so unfortunately, you're gonna get small images from me.
Okay.
But that didn't work at all.
I did have a question though before, because I had this image, and this is, I found it interesting. It's a perspective, and I'm just not sure what you guys think about it. I, like, as I've said, openly say I am not against anime, manga in any way, shape, or form. I just, whenever I've tried to get into it, I've very rarely found something that held my interest. So, but this is a point that I saw someone make, and I'm just like, oh, that's interesting, and I want to have a conversation about this. It's very nuanced position. Is that like accurate? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Sorry.
I refuse to dignify that with a response.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's stupid. It's ableist anyway.
Then we got.
Okay, so I got some Nazis here. Oh, that first one didn't really.
Yeah, some of them aren't gonna blow up real well.
Work out. Got that one. And then that second one, that's a good sized image. Good one.
I'm trying to find ones more that image, but it's disagreeing with me because the internet's an awful place.
It really is. It's one of the hardest things there is about finding images for free that someone else made.
Especially when I'm doing it on the fly. That one looked bigger on my screen. That one might size better. We'll find out. All right. So, and then.
I want to do an episode of the podcast on how Facebook is very much a dick, and not just because they've helped create genocides and hate.
Oh yeah.
But because when I go searching for an image, and I'm always trying to find the largest resolution one I can of anything, and it can be hard sometimes, especially older images. But I'll see one, and I'm like, oh look, that looks like the perfect size, and I click on it, and usually you can just download it by right-clicking from right there in Google image search, right? On the preview. You right-click and you download it from the preview, and it's the full-size image. Facebook seems to not want people to be able to do that from Facebook posts.
No, they don't. Yeah.
You can't do it, so they're all blurry and shit, and it's like, I know you want me to fucking get an account and get back on there, but I'm not doing it. So let's do a whole episode about that, please.
Yeah, we need to do an episode on Facebook because...
True.
I think there are moral panics about Facebook, and there are. So this is Insomnia Hitler from Spy Family, which is very funny, and I recommend it. He's also a bad dad.
Why are you a coward? What did you say? Are you a Nazi? Because Nazis are cowards.
Yeah, I'm confused, but okay, Facebook does suck.
Sorry, I'm going to save these comments instead of reacting to them now.
All right.
So who's this guy?
This is Donovan. He is a Hitler-esque figure in Spy Family, and I call him Insomnia Hitler because it looks like he has never slept in his life.
True. Well, whoever called you a coward shouldn't do that unless you did something to deserve it.
All right.
Somebody's being mean to our new chatter. Don't be.
Yeah, let me know and I will bully them.
Then there's...
I mean, he is from the East Germany analog, but he fucking looks like Hitler.
This is from Gundam, right?
No, this is from Full Metal Alchemist, and this one's really subtle. So this is Eye Patch Hitler. The character's name is Führer King Bradley. The Führer, definitely no Nazi political woke anything in using a Nazi allegory like that. No, siree.
Yeah. So I guess it begs the question of like, how do we decide a Hitler? I mean, this one obviously, but so Insomnia Hitler though, what about him that makes him Hillary?
Well, his characters, and he's a weird. My brain is starting to die on me, so give me a second. I'm gonna have a sip of coffee, and I'm gonna channel my thoughts.
No, I know, okay. Lol, that you weren't. I was just joking. I was using it as an excuse to say that Nazis are cowards. I wasn't suggesting you are that.
So, he is a political agitator in a German-inspired country with far right-wing leanings. And the manga and the anime are kind of vague about what those are. Oh, we're getting to the Nazi vampires. Well, we're getting to their friend.
Okay.
So they sort of talk around it because he's kind of a MacGuffin in the show, just because of how the story plays out. But he's sort of the why the plot is happening.
Yeah, and so there might be a whole other episode we need to do this because I definitely we got 4 minutes till we hit 3 hours. I don't know how much we have left to do, but
yeah, I don't have much left. This is kind of it.
But I do think that there's something worth discussing in how much using the Nazis as like it's like when we talk about Nazis, historically, let's say prior to 2014. Okay,
sure.
When people would talk about Nazis on the right and whatnot, in real life is generally just that most people seem to be like, oh, that's the Nazis are the worst thing. And so generally they were politically, at least in modern times.
They're real bad.
And then in fiction, there's, like you're saying, plenty of examples of just being the inspiration of like the ultimate bad guys.
Right.
And so I can't help but wonder how much that has played into this modern, rise in fascists that like, I don't know, where like
it's an interesting conversation
because a lot of the problem with dealing with this fascism shit has been getting people to see it as fascism, because thankfully it's been talked about that way more in like mainstream media and stuff the last couple of years, especially since 2020, January 6th. But like basically through the entirety of Trump's presidency, it was very rare to find anybody willing to fucking call this shit, like this is what it's leading to, right? Like they talked about it like it was just normal, but kind of like a wacky thing happening in normal times. And it was upsetting to me. It's one of the reasons I started my YouTube channel.
Right.
Like you guys aren't talking about this as what it is. And so because we have this general idea that still do, that we defeated the fascism. We defeated the Nazis, like that's a thing of the past.
Right.
We won. And so like, it's absurd to even mention that as anything real, or like, and yeah. So I wonder how much that, because that's that narrative that we told ourselves as a country and we learned in school definitely played a role in not being able to take it as seriously whenever it did pop up again, more prominently. But then that makes me wonder how much the fiction aspect of it also played in that. Anyway.
Right. So I am beginning to have cutout issues. I have been in and out for the last 3 minutes.
Oh,
I'm sure it's fine.
Well, yeah. I mean, we can go ahead and wrap up unless there's something like what you really needed to get to.
I want to show the last two because I think they're actually important to talking about how we portray Nazis in media as an aside.
Okay.
And the other one is just ridiculous, and I want to show it because it's stupid.
Okay, one of these is from Gundam, right?
Yes, of course. One was going to be from Gundam. It's me.
And then, oh my god, that is that. Holy shit! Decent image size, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Why isn't that one downloading? What the fuck?
I don't know.
No, that last one is not one. I can pull it up in Discord, I guess, but I just want to make sure I don't have anything that I don't want revealed.
Sure.
I I can open it in browser. Try that. Yeah, there we go.
Okie dokie.
So this is not in the order that you sent them to me because
Okay.
I opened that other one. So this is this one.
All right, that's Schrodinger. That's a Nazi cat boy. Because we needed a Nazi cat boy.
Thank you. Hope to see you again here. We'll be streaming Wednesday, different show, different people, kind of different topics. And then Friday, different show. It's kind of the same topic. Yeah. Sunday, Wednesday, Friday. See you.
Yep, I'll be here Sundays. So yeah, Hellsing is weird and dumb, and I love it, but it's a Nazi cat boy, and it's just so absurd I had to show people because what the fuck?
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it almost like doesn't that undermine the idea of a Nazi being like a maybe I'm just partial to cat boys. I don't know.
That it undermines the Nazi ideal of this strong Aryan. Yes, it does. That's kind of one of the points of Hellsing is that the Nazis are kind of like cowardly wimps who need to cheat and use all sorts of dumb bullshit.
Let me tell you what the problem is here in terms of, and I guess this is also an anime versus Western animation thing maybe,
Sure.
But like at least in terms of Western animation, we tend to use Big Eyes as like a heroic thing. It's a purity, right. a good guy, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then less Disney cartoons in particular. You look at the villains always have like tiny little eyes, and and so that might be a bit of a mixed messaging, but I doubt it's on purpose.
Right. It's that Disney inspired anime heavily, and so everyone kind of looks like a big-eyed Disney character. Though not all of our people here, we're going to get to that last one, and they definitely have that small, classic Disney villain eyes.
Sorry, that comment seems weird. I don't know if that's accurate. Okay, and then there is one that I know is from Gundam because I've seen a little bit of Gundam.
All right. So this here is Giran Zabi, and he wants to be Hitler. Like, he refers to Hitler in the show as like someone he aspires to be like. And he is a space Nazi. And I think he is an important part of how not to mythologize Nazis, because I think they do it right. Because he thinks he is the Hitler. And towards the end of the show, spoilers for a show from 1979, with animation from 1979, and all that entails, he kills the other people who lead his country. He's sort of the middle manager. Like, he works under his father, who's the sovereign, and his brother and sister are running the war effort, and he's just kind of the guy who gives speeches. And he gets his brother and his father killed. He has them assassinated, effectively. He leaves his brother to die, and he actually fires like a James Bond doomsday space laser at his father to kill him.
Nice. I mean,
and the whole war effort falls apart because it turns out when Nazis, space Nazis and otherwise, actually aren't that competent any more so than anybody else. And so when your leadership structure falls apart and your logistics fall apart and you're entirely relying on this man-made myth of how great our people are and how we're going to rule the world because it's our destiny, but you don't have all the little things that go into that, it all falls apart because you bought your own bullshit and couldn't actually do the war.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good example of how to portray a Nazi character, unlike some of our other examples, who are just kind of like, the first one is goofy, the second one is competent, the one's a cat boy. So, like, yeah, they sort of undermine, they either undermine the threat of fascism or they overestimate its ability.
Yeah.
When in reality, at the end of the day, to effectively run any large institution, whether it is a government or a war effort, you can't. You need to be pragmatic, and you can't just believe your own bullshit, and you can't surround yourself with people who believe your own bullshit.
Yeah, and that's pretty crucial to it, right? Because it kind of serves to highlight the fact that, you know, like these YouTubers that I often talked about on this channel, that we have talked about on this one and stuff, like they may believe a little bit of some of the shit that they like to say, but they don't believe all of it. Even Vance Geiger does not really believe a lot of the shit he's saying. He, honestly, and this is the best compliment I can give the guy, other than he used to be a good artist, is he's too smart to believe some of the shit that he says.
Right.
He just is, and it's pretty clear, like that he. And that's the thing. That's what manipulative, narcissistic people do to maintain power over a group of people. Is to know that at least some portion of the shit they're slinging is bullshit. And, you know, they got to not get high on that supply, so to speak.
Right. But also, there comes a point, and, you know, Hitler ran into this problem in Nazi Germany, too. Like, if you start bopping off anyone competent, you're left with ass kissers who are just going to look for more asses to kiss and not actually do anything productive. And so it's always, fascism is self-defeating, because you are going to narrow down the number of people under your umbrella, right? Like,
Bannon is exactly who I was thinking of when I said that. That, like, he knows everything he's saying is bullshit.
Right. Yeah. Bannon is I think until Bannon got high on his own supply too, which is why he's under federal indictment and some state indictments.
Yeah. I just think that he got a little too carried away with what he could get away with that people would overlook while he was slinging his bullshit. But like, also, he's just as clever as he is fucking disgusting looking.
Oh yeah, if there is evidence that like being evil is bad for you, look at what the last like 7 years have done to Steve Bannon.
It's like the Sith thing, right?
Right. It really is. Like, in the last 7 years, I look a lot better than I did 7 years ago. Steve Bannon is literally rotting before your eyes. Like, in 7 years, he has grown some sort of weird face chin tumor, and I grew boobs. So, like, I'll take the W.
Yeah. I mean, I guess. And then so we can look here just to serve the point, because why not? It's not necessarily a visual medium that we're doing here, but it can be. Why not?
It can be. It's a renewable resource of skin flakes. Nope, not even you rock. I award you 1 point. Spend it wisely. Yeah, Chuds, being a hateful shit is bad for your skin.
Oops, not that one. Yeah, I don't want you guys to see my pornography.
Ooh, spicy.
I'm not looking at pornography over here, but
have I told you the porn story? I don't mind sharing this. This is while you're looking. This is a funny aside. Oh, Facebook is more than
they're starting to, huh?
Yeah, I was gonna say you're a little late to the party, pal.
Facebook has just since I think it was like in 2012, 2013 that Facebook enabled a genocide.
Yep. Active participant.
Yep. No, active because it was pointed out to them and they continued to let it happen.
They continued to do it. Yep.
So we're not gonna look at fucking Steve. Fuck that Steve Bannon, man.
Fuck Steve Bannon.
We do need to do an episode on him though, because that guy has forced a lot of adversity.
I have bad news. Not even. So I give out the points that you may spend wisely. I am not the person who takes them for you to trade in for goods and services. I also don't know where that person is. I just give the points out.
What happened?
So I gave not even a point for their Steve Bannon being a renewable source of skin flakes, and they asked to spend the point to tickle you, and I had to inform them that
I'm not tickling.
I don't. Okay, you might. I don't know that, and I'm nowhere near to tickle you. But also, I cannot collect the points in exchange for goods and services. I can only hand them out. Why
Jeffrey,
is it? He's rich.
I've addressed this with you before specifically. So like you kind of ask similar question a lot, and I'm not trying to be mean or single you out like or anything like that. But I mean, you do ask a kind of question that repeats the sentiment of like, why isn't Geeks and Gamers in jail and stuff like that? And it's like, because there's no system implemented that would hold them accountable for what they've done.
Right.
And then especially in terms of like Zuckerberg, he's rich. And so whenever there has been attempts to, have some kind of system, it's like they basically fall on the free speech thing. And, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to tell you. It's just like this is the same answer whenever you ask this typically, is that there's no system in place to hold people accountable for the things that you are very rightly
you're right,
pissed off about.
It's like even if the places where his company has damaged would want to hold him responsible, he's not going to get extradited there, so they would have to like snag him on an extradition order when he's overseas, which would be rad if someone did that.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, I do have to disagree here. Like that's kind of a defeatist take, right? And I get the frustration. It feels like there's no justice. There's definitely not nearly enough justice for a lot of things that deserve it. But there is some justice, and like, so this type of thought can lead you to just kind of giving up. And I refuse to allow that. I refuse to allow you to give up, Jeffrey. So
I believe in you, Jeffrey. And not just because you show up here all the time and are generally awesome.
I mean, we're fans of nuance here at actual what is it? Fandom Context? I forgot. Fandom. So
Well, yours says Actane AF actual fandom, and mine is soul way down by gravity.
Sure. All right.
So here at actual fandom, whose soul is way down by gravity, we're for nuance.
Yep.
Unjustice is an untickled day. No, Unjustice is a DC fighting game that's all right.
How about
drove
this?
My friend insane.
To add a little nuance to what you're saying, it's very difficult and often seems impossible for the richest people to have justice done upon them for the things that they do. There is justice in the world. So like there is, varying degrees to varying parts of the country and the world and stuff like that, but it exists, and we shouldn't give up on it.
I kind of think that's why these rich assholes tend to like glomp onto each other, is because you have, being that filthy rich, you are not public enemy number one as far as I am concerned. You're like 7 or 8. Because they've kind of done a crime against humanity in a real way, right? Like, they've exploited a whole lot of labor to get where they are. They probably don't have a lot of friends. And so the only people you can talk to are other monsters who've done the same thing, right? Like, who else is going to talk to you? Like, you're going to get paranoid that you're that rich and then you've exploited all of these resources from people, and like anyone who's not as rich as you is there to take something from you. And then so like all you can socialize with honestly in your own mind is other rich fucks. Like, it rots your brain. Which is also why they get less creative as they go on, right? Like, what has Zuckerberg done lately that's succeeded? He bought a VR company. And that was 1,000 years ago when he bought Oculus. Hey, look, I would look at the laws Minnesota passed recently. Like, I definitely look at the news and go, wow, things are fucked, right? I have an escape plan for if things go tits up where I live.
Yes.
But you look at what Minnesota has done and what Michigan has done too.
Minnesota did a lot of good shit recently.
They did.
Like they're like, hey, let's everybody do what Minnesota has been doing, because holy shit, workers' rights and everything.
Like, there is justice in the world, but it's hard and it takes time.
This is why I get what you're saying, and you did an appeal to the fact that you are trans and non-binary, and I get that. I think it's unfair to kind of turn that at me that way, honestly. But I understand the feeling of it, and I'm not mad at you about it. But I do want to point out that, trans people are being used as a political, wedge issue prop right now. And we are dedicating the entirety of fucking June. And we talk about it generally, but like June is going to be a whole lot of stuff. We're going to announce it probably Wednesday. Fuck it, I'll announce it now. We're going to be doing an ongoing, drive to get donations to a couple of different funds for, one is for, what is it? Something, I don't know, DJ kind of brought it up is the one that he wants to do. And we're also just going to generally suggest people donate to the Trevor Project all month long and all the time. But like, we're also doing a lot of content that's specifically focused on, these issues, some of it, in dealing with the very awful shit that's happened and that is happening. And then some of it's just going to be more celebratory of like, LGBTQ people, creators, content, all that stuff. And, so in that regard, I understand what you're saying. And I'm doing everything that I can with my little fucking channel for sure. But also it's important to keep context in mind. Like 2022, they're
in Florida. So I 1,000% finding it hard.
Yeah. Holy shit. Wow. I'm sorry. Like Florida, there's nothing I can say. Florida's a fucking hellscape right now. And I only hope that like people,
I hope if you can get out or be safe. I'm trying not to cry right now. So
yeah, I know it's hard to stay positive. So what I think that I would try to do, and there's no way I can be in that specific situation, but I have been in very, very shitty circumstances where I felt like there was like no hope and stuff. And it's like, what I would tend to resort to is just being as pragmatic as possible. Right. And like, and you kind of go, okay, this is the reality of my situation. It sucks. Is there anything that can be done to, if it gets to where there's self-preservation is the only thing you can do, like what can be done in that regard? I don't know if you follow Erin Reed on Twitter, you should. She does generally just work. Ongoing, tracking of these laws and what's going on, and also kind of like where you might be able to go to in the event that things get where they've kind of already gotten in Florida, to be honest. So yeah. I don't know. I wish I could tell you better. Like fuck.
I literally wish I could like put you on a plane right now and fly you up here. Like I wish I could do that for so many people. It's a disaster there. There's not words.
It's just you, Philip.
It's clearly, yeah.
No.
Okay, so man, and I know the right. I'm gonna get on my soapbox here for a minute, if you don't mind. I know the right likes to portray people on the left as hypocrites for supporting Disney against Ron DeSantis. But I look at it this way. How fucked do you have to be as a political body to get the left to unite behind fucking Disney with their list of all sorts of dumb shit? Like, how fucking crazy bananas do you have to be to get the left to unite with the one of the iconic mega corporations? It's wild. Yeah, I mean
that's how far right it is, right? Like it's to the point where
it's
Disney sucks in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they really do. But
even if they're just on an executive level, corporate level, only doing it because it's where the the social wins and the financial wins are going,
right.
And look, I've seen some stuff with Target that's got me nervous.
So here's the thing I noticed with Target and with Bud Light. They made a mistake. They blinked. This is why this isn't going their way. We're Disney. Like Disney is quintupled down at this point. And that has only really helped them as far as the PR campaign goes. And that's because you don't negotiate with terrorists, right? And these are terrorists. I mean, look at the situation they've trapped Floridians in, to use the example we're talking about, as I try to keep it together. Jeffrey, I don't know how you do it. You're like being here talking, like you're incredibly strong, and I want you to know that. And that you're brave enough to tell us how you feel in that situation. I want you to know that means a lot to me, and I'm glad that you're here.
And that's why I've never been like, I may have like challenged the way you say things sometimes, but I'm never trying to deny the way you feel about it. But I just like, hey, it's important to keep certain context and facts in mind that it can, actually help you maybe not feel better overall, but like see some light. I don't know, have some sense of hope when I know it's very little in these regards. Like you go to the Trevor Project where you can reach a counselor, but up here, that's depressing, higher than usual, but at least there's someone out there, I mean, it's not ideal. It sucks and people are suffering, but I don't know. It's a good cause.
If you're in the what do we call it now? The House of F Discord, you can always talk to me. I'm around.
Yeah, are you part of that, Jeffrey? I don't think I've seen you there. Our Discord server, which is now the initiative Discord server, so it's like growing. And if you join now, I'll because I know you and you've been around a while, I'll bypass the new person role that we are having people use. Gordy, come on, man, stop it, fucking with the box.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, if you're up to it and want to hop on there, there's some cool people there. I vouch for them.
Get a link here. Anyways, where were we? What are we doing? What's going on?
We are quickly fading.
Yeah, exactly. I am.
You've been moving. You are here fighting the good fight. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. We have a pretty good turnout. Really involved chat.
Indeed.
But,
yeah. Hopefully we can keep that up. Have some of that next week too. Yeah.
And next week we're on some other fun stuff. What are we on next week? Let me go to our fun little topic ideas. So
you know what? I don't even know. I feel like an asshole for you just now realizing this, but I'm going to have Trevor Project information like on screen just all the time.
Brad,
I think that because I look hands, all cards on the table. Since the idea of this podcast came up, and I was like, we should do this. It'd be a fun thing to look into the history of this stuff. I also knew that it was a serious thing to look into because of the fact that this trans panic is directly related. We talk about it pretty often. It's always been part of the kind of foundation of this podcast is knowing that is a good reason to talk about these things, even ones that have nothing to do with trans panic or anything. Like it can still tell us about this reactionary impulse to something that people don't understand or it's new or whatever and go, oh no, that's the new bad thing, it's going to kill everybody or whatever. And right. That's what's happening with this trans panic, and the right is very, very obviously cynically using it for these purposes of just winning politically. And here's the thing, Jeffrey, and I know this doesn't help you in where you're at, but I do think it's important to note that it hasn't worked super well for them. It works in the sense that it gets people on the internet saying shitty things to trans people, and that's fucked up. But like, you would think that as much as they've been pushing it, that it would have yielded more success for certain things, and it hasn't in a lot of ways. It has in some ways, I guess. But like, yeah, I don't think that it's doing is what they hoped it would so far, and that's why we have to keep talking about it, keep exposing the bullshit. DeSantis has been the anti-trans guy, right? That's just has been his thing. He's been, going after it. And as soon as Trump became, officially involved in the race for president, DeSantis started losing ground. Like you would think if anti-trans was the thing that was really motivating them, like that was the primary thing, that they would have stuck with DeSantis, right? But no, they're just Trump people, a lot of them, and they think that he can bring out a win.
And they're fighting amongst each other now over all that, which is, I love it when bad guys fight. So
yeah, I mean that's just kind of all they have, though.
Yep, that's all they got.
So yeah. Anyway, we will.
So what do we got next week?
Next week, did we decide on what we're doing? And Jeffrey, you're on Twitter, right? I'll send you a link on Twitter to the Discord. Fuck, did we decide on a?
No, we have not. So it's the 4th. I know we have a special guest on the 7th, I believe.
Do we?
Yeah.
Oh,
your
yeah.
buddy.
Okay, shit. I need to get caught up with my own plans.
Right? But that's why I'm the ADHD whisperer. Those things stick in my brain to remind my ADHD friends.
I'm looking at the list here. Oh, so it'll be June by then, right?
Yeah, it will be the start of Pride.
How about queer comics?
Queer comics. Do you want to see if Eric can join us?
DJ or
DJ? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure if he can, he will. I know that he's planning content with us for the initiative streams and stuff, and that's exciting. So, like, yeah, I'm sure if he's available, he definitely will. And that'll be good. But otherwise, I'm sure we can get some other people. We know some people. Let's see what people might be wanting to talk about comics and stuff like that. So, good times. And it's going to be generally, I think we're going to try and keep it balanced at least. We're definitely going to have to get into some unfortunate topics, but I don't think, at least from what's listed here, of course, I don't really know what the Lavender Scare entailed, so maybe that's pretty awful.
That is a return to our the one of the reasons that that the state of Wisconsin is so villainized on this show. That is a return to McCarthy, and it is the 50s panic that there were queers in the government that could be blackmailed by the communists because being gay was illegal.
So basically just more of like the...
Now let's talk about the Transformers agenda. AKA, they're putting chemicals in the Energon and trying to turn our bots gay. That drop is my everything. I fucking love it.
All right. Yeah, so we're going to do that next week. And then we've got some cool stuff. I don't want to give it all away, but we've got cool things planned. Got cool guests planned. One in particular I'm very, very excited about.
I am too. Hey, we're going to have that week. We're going to have at least an even number of trans folks to cis folks. So that'll be...
Oh, shit. Well, it depends if DJ... I guess if
DJ shows up that week, then yeah, we're...
So, maybe we'll just have the other guest is just the single guest that week, so we can kind of keep it balanced. All right. So, hey, everybody, if you're not subscribed, you should be. And you should also subscribe to the Forced Adversity podcast channel. I think
the Transformers episode just went up there, and I'm pretty proud of it.
Yup. And you guys ever imagine, like, what it would be like if the world was just full of everybody just looked like you? You ever think about that?
Oh, it sounds awful.
Well, here's something to consider on your way out the door. And we love you, and take care of yourselves and each other, and have a great week. See you Wednesday.
This, like any story worth telling, is all about me. Peter Parker. That's me next to her. Heck, even him.
Peter, may I introduce my father? Peter.
Heard so much about you.
Great honor to meet you, sir.
You know, I'm something of a puppet myself.
Yes.
Impressive.
Really brilliant.
Think you're pretty funny, don't you, freak?
I don't want to fight you, Peter.
I wouldn't want to fight me neither. Kick his ass, man.